No. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Hillsborough Township Planning Board meeting of December 1st, 2022. Please join me in a salute to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be advised this meeting has been duly advertised according to Section 5 of the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, otherwise known as the Sunshine Law. Notice of the 2022 annual meeting schedule has been provided to the officially designated newspapers, the Township Clerk, posted on the Township's website, and available in the Hillsborough Township Municipal Complex. In addition, application documents have been made available on the Township Civic Clerk website, and complete application files are available in the Planning and Zoning Department for inspection in accordance with the meeting, with public meeting notice. And with that, may I have a roll call of board members and board and township professionals, please?
Mr. Wagner.
Here.
Mr. Beasley.
Here.
Mr. Santa Romita.
Here.
Mr. Scobо.
Here.
Mr. Hashtag.
Here.
Mr. Ciccarelli.
Here.
Ms. Smith.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Delcourt.
Here.
Mayor Labani.
Here.
Vice Chair Julian.
Here.
Chair Sarachi.
Here.
Mr. Maskey.
Here.
Mr. Bernstein.
Here.
Mr. Hack.
Here.
Cass. Here.
Excellent. Got a full house tonight. Excellent. So first up, we have consideration of the October 13th, 2022 meeting minutes. Bernstein?
Eligible members are Mr. Peason, Mr. Hestag, Ms. Smith, Deputy Mayor Delcor, Mayor Lapani, Vice Chairman, and yourself.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there a,
I'll second it.
thank you. Is any comments from the dais? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Peason.
Yes.
Mr. Hashtag. Mr.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Delcourt.
Yes.
Mayor Labani. Yes. Vice Chair Julian.
Yes.
Chair Sarachi.
Yes. Okay, we do not have any resolutions for consideration nor ordinances. There is no planning board business, so next we will just go to business from the floor for matters that are not on this evening's agenda. If you'd like to address the board on any matters that are not on this evening's agenda, please come up, state your name and address for the record, and just a reminder that there is a 5-minute limit.
Maria Janusik, 720 East Breck Avenue, Manville, New Jersey. I'm also a Hillsborough Township property owner, Block 86, Lot 3, 2155 Camp Plain Road. I have something that I want to bring up from a prior meeting, and I have copies of what I'm going to discuss, if that can be handed out to the board members.
Mr. Bernstein.
Yep. Yeah, Mr. Bernstein, please. Pass it along.
Going this way.
Do you need one more?
We can share. Go ahead.
Can you share? This is in regard to the November 3rd, 2022 meeting, Hillsborough Township Planning Board meeting that was in regard to the application Homestead 279 LLC. I was present at that meeting. During that meeting, two handouts were provided. One was the agenda for the night, for the meeting, for the application, the public hearing, and the second handout was this memo to Carl Sirachi, Chairman, Hillsborough Township Planning Board, in regard to the subject Homestead LLC, Homestead 279 LLC. And this is a memo from Michael Foley, Chairman of the Hillsborough Township Environmental Commission. And this is in regard to the stormwater testing data. It says here, while Whitestone claims to have conducted additional basin flood infiltration testing at the site, the data is still suspect. The stormwater designs use an infiltration rate of 0.5 inches per hour, which would require that field infiltration tests yield an infiltration rate of 1.0 inches per hour. All 6 basin flood tests yielded identical results, which seems highly unlikely. Also, it is interesting that each test started in the morning of August 5th, 2022, and ended August 5th, 1955. Also, all 6 data sheets have the same typo, with all the results being exacting the same 12 inches over 12 hours at all 6 basin test pits, and all have the same date typo, makes these data questionable. The township should have witnessed these infiltration tests. The next paragraph. The comment above refers to the supplemental stormwater management area evaluation that was dated September 1, 2022, and received by the township on September 13, 2022. This comment was never addressed. The revised stormwater report that was provided to the Environmental Commission at the last Environmental Commission meeting dated October 19, 2022 has the same data from the August 4, 2022 report, where there are 9 infiltration tests presented, all with identical results. All the data were collected by field engineer, in quotes, AP, who apparently was measuring the results in 9 test pits at the exact same time. The data is clearly fabricated and does not demonstrate an adequate infiltration rate. What's being done about this? It states here the data is clearly fabricated. Fabricated means made up, which means it's false, which means it's fraudulent. What's being done about this?
Well, one, get that off. I mean, one, we're still hearing this application, so it's still ongoing, so there hasn't been any final actions taken on it. And also just a reminder, the Environmental Commission is an advisory board. And we take, this information under advisement. So I'm not sure
Thank
what
you for
you're
pointing it
seeking.
out.
Who is responsible for verifying stormwater testing data? Who is responsible for that?
Well, the applicant's professional, and I know our engineer will review those reports.
Will review the reports. These are back from August.
Mr. Chairman,
September.
this is scheduled for December 8th. It's a continuing application.
Right. I know. I mean, we can't really comment to that extent. I'm just giving you generalities that with this information, it's the responsibility of the applicant to ensure its accuracy, and we have our professionals to review it, to provide us guidance,
Right
along
here,
with the
right-
Environmental Commission. that
5
will-
minutes.
Right here, it
provide
says
that.
it's fabricated.
Ms. Janicek,
data, and this application is going to continue?
Ms.
No one's
Janicek, Ms.
questioning
Janicek,
this?
let
No,
me,
I will. I have
your
5 minutes.
time is up.
My
Let me
time-
answer your question. You asked a question, let me answer
Go
it.
ahead.
This is data that was provided by the Environmental Commission in response to an applicant's report. Just like every other piece of evidence, it needs to be considered when we do the application. So the Environmental Commission has given their assessment, and it'll be part of the process we move forward with. We can't give you any more than that, and we don't stop because someone has an opinion on we talked about this last time. We do not just stop an application, or we can't tell them they can't present. Because the first thing, they'll drag us into court the next day and we'll still be back here. So we're going to hear the evidence and then we'll make a decision.
Fabricated data. 2 weeks ago, I was at the Manville Borough meeting, and I presented this to Mayor Anderko and to the administrator. And Administrator Caminiti said, it's fraudulent. If you want, individuals can contact the New Jersey Attorney General. Fabricated data. Who is verifying this? If this is fabricated, what else is fabricated? What can we trust? What can we, members of the public, Hillsborough property owners, what can we trust when you get a statement like this?
Ms.
And
Janusik, I suggest we come next week and hear the
I understand they
answer.
are an advisory.
Ms.
board.
Janusik, come next week and hear the answer during the application, okay?
And you can question
And
the,
the application is in front of this board next Thursday. Come next Thursday, okay?
This application is continuing despite fabricated
It has
data.
to.
It has
It has to?
Deputy Mayor Delcor just told you why,
Okay,
okay?
okay.
And then the decision we made at the end.
And this application isn't on next week's agenda.
Yes, it is. December 8th.
Not
No,
home-
not
not
the-
Homestead
not the-
279.
No, this is Redcom, this is
Oh.
Delon.
Okay, I apologize. Whenever the next whenever it comes in front of us, it'll continue.
And so there's never any consequences. This is a quasi.
No,
this is
that's a
quasi-
different
this is
question. No, that's a different
quasi-judicial
question.
Right.
You're
board.
asking, is there
This is a
consequences?
quasi-judicial
We will hear
board.
the evidence and move forward.
Fabricated data,
Please stop.
and there is
Please
nothing
stop.
being done.
Thank you.
Ms.
Your time is
Janusik,
up.
there is a process. We go through this every freaking meeting with you.
But I have
There's a
never heard
process we have to
before
go through.
Someone actually being told it's fabricated data. This needs to have consequences.
Thank you.
any other members of the public who would like to address the board on any matters on?
This application's not
State
continuing.
your name and
Sorry.
address, please.
Merrill Leesburg, 4 Hickory Hill Road. The memo in question is for 279 Homestead. That's continuing after the beginning of the year.
That's correct.
So
I
that's
I
2
misspoke.
months.
Yes.
While I understand the application has to continue, I would feel better knowing, since I think we do trust our volunteers who are also professionals on the Environmental Commission, that we are also checking with the Better Business Bureau, that we're looking back to see where Whetstone had their hands in other applications that we
Mr.
have,
Chairman,
that we're looking at who performed this.
Okay. I think, unfortunately, you're going down the same path as Ms. Janusik. We can't comment on this because it's an ongoing application. I know you're looking for something, for an answer that's not going to get provided to satisfy you this evening. Now, as a member of the public, you're more than certainly welcome to continue if you feel you've got evidence that is worthy of the Attorney General. I would encourage you to go knock on their doors. But we can't do anything. We can't comment on it. I don't know why, and we've had this issue in the past where you're looking for us to comment on applications that are ongoing. We can't do anything.
The day before, the engineer issued his report, our engineer. And I think the other things that need to kind of be reconciled is, are we looking to the EC to help us with this? And if not, is the engineer going to go forward and issue a report in the face of this that doesn't find any problems? I mean, I think
I'm not sure why this is complicated. I really don't understand.
it's not complicated.
You're right, it's not. This is evidence. And when the hearing comes up, it will be considered. And we'll deal with it at the point that the evidence is being heard. Until then, I'm not sure what you would expect us to do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hay and I have had conversations. We will continue to have them and address them accordingly prior to the next hearing. That's all we can do at this point.
Thank you. Any other comments for the board on matters not on this evening's agenda? Okay, we're going to move on to applications, public hearing. First is more of an administrative matter. 1170 Millstone LLC, Redcom, with file number of 22-PB-09-MSPV, with a time of decision of February 28th of next year. The applicant had requested to be adjourned to the January 12th, 2023 regular meeting, planning board meeting at 7:30 PM for a scheduling date only once the 2023 planning board annual meeting schedule gets adopted. And this application will require notice prior to that 2023 scheduled hearing date. So with that, we will move on to this evening's hearing. M&M Realty Partners at Hillsborough LLC, the West Track, with the file number of 21-PB-16-MSV, with the time of decision of December 2nd, 2022. And with that, Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Deputy Mayor, members of the Planning Board. For the record, I'm Doug Wolfson, representing the applicant M&M. We have a couple of witnesses to help us tie up the application this evening. First, I'm going to call Mr. Mark Moriello, who's the Director of Environmental Planning for Edgewood Properties, which is the parent corporation, to just go over with you the current status of DEP permits.
Okay, thank you.
I'll swear you. You swear any testimony you give tonight is going to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. The record, you state, spell your name, please.
It's Mark,
Go close to that mic.
Mark with a K. Last name is Mauriello.
You can have a seat.
Yeah, just have a seat, sir. There's a microphone right there.
Okay.
Mark, you heard my intro remarks to the board. Just tell them what's new in the DEP world.
Sure. We thought it'd be useful to update the board and the public on the status of several applications that we have before the department, some of which have been acted on, some which remain pending. And just briefly, we received a freshwater wetlands letter of interpretation back in December of 2021, which verified the limits of wetlands, jurisdictional wetlands on the site, as well as wetland transition areas. We had a flood hazard area verification and a riparian zone verification application was also approved in March of 22. And those are significant in that they represent the department's jurisdiction over the site relative to the Flood Hazard Area Control Act. We had a Flood Hazard Area Control Act individual permit that was recently approved October 24th of this year. That permit authorized the development that's before you tonight. Excuse me. And similar to the application that's pending tonight, the development included the 198 single-family residential lots, but authorized 188 single-family homes. As you may recall from the earlier hearing, there are 10 proposed residential homes that are currently proposed in an area that's not within the approved sewer service plan for the site. And so our application for the Flood Hazard Area Control Act individual permit authorized the 188 single-family homes, as well as all of the grading, the clearing, the utilities, the drainage, stormwater management for the entire development. And with the exception of the 10 residential dwellings on the lots outside of the sewer service area. And segue from that is we have an application pending for a water quality management plan amendment to include those 10 lots that are currently outside of the sewer service area. That application has been pending since July of 2019. DEP moves at a glacial pace, and with all due respect to the agency, it was during the COVID period and remote working. But we expect that application will be out to public notice this month. We've been in contact with the department on that. And then the last action that remains pending before the department is freshwater wetland general permit and transition area waiver applications. They remain pending. We expect those to be issued within the next month. All the support field work has been completed. It's just a matter of staff getting to it to get those issued. So that's the status of the DEP actions, and hopefully that's informative to the board.
Mr. Chairman, that's the extent of Mr. Moriello's contribution this evening.
I have a question, just for clarification. You said you submitted the wastewater management plan amendment back in 2019.
Correct.
Now, we knew that the eastern tract was not in the sewer service area from day one, and we knew you had applied for that. These additional 10 lots, were they part of that original application, or is that something you had to add on?
They are included in the application, so it
So in
includes.
2019, you had included
That's
these
correct.
10 lots at that point.
Right.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I don't really have any questions to ask. I think it just should be noted that, we haven't had a hearing on this application in some time. And hearing that there's 188 units that have been approved, with the individual permit, I think that is of note, and the board should take that into consideration. But again, the issue with respect to wetlands with the general permit and transition area waiver, or transition area averaging plan that was put together, that's being put into question. If the application were to be taken action on by the board, I would just note to the board that, there should be some type of condition put in that once that approval comes in with the conditions that'll come in with that general permit, that they be made part of any type of compliance to meet resolution. Thank you.
No objection.
And that transition area permit, that impacts 15 lots, correct?
I don't know the full extent of that. I could certainly clarify. I thought it was between 10 and 15, Eric, but I can't say with certainty.
15 that are currently impacted by that.
Right.
Okay.
That's 15 lots in addition to the 10, correct?
There is some overlap. Some of the ones that, part of the reason those 10 are outside the sewer service area is because the sewer service area excludes the wetland areas and the transition areas. That's why they fell out. So there are, I believe, 10 lots that are not in the sewer service area, but they're also impacted by that transition area. And then there's additional 5 that aren't impacted by the sewer issue. So there is an overlap.
Yeah, and I would add that the old sewer service plans, as you know, are somewhat general in terms of the wetlands mapping that was used to define the limits of those areas. The letter of interpretation is a much more refined evaluation of the jurisdictional wetlands on the site. So that's the normal progression, and that represents the boundary that dictates permitting and those activities.
Okay, just reading my own notes just for clarification. So 15 lots would be located in the stream corridor pre-averaging. 10 lots, 4 of which are also in the above group, the stream corridor pre-averaging, are outside the sewer service area.
And Mr. Chairman, the only other thing I would add is in relation to, seeking the sanitary sewer area amendment, we want to just make sure that if the board is to take action to make sure that the applicant is able to meet all the conditions of that amendment, as well as anything that's promulgated by the Regional Sewerage Authority. I've been in touch with the executive director the last couple of weeks. We've spoken. He hasn't seen anything yet, but if there is any action that the Sewerage Authority decides to take to regional, we want to make sure that that's made in conditions as well. Thank you.
Okay. Any comments from the board? Okay.
Yeah, I
Go
just
ahead.
have a couple of things. Was this, I was trying to remember too, did this have anything to do with townships stream corridor? Was there any issues with that from last time? Was there like buffer averaging that we were going to do with that? You remember?
I'm just addressing the DEP
Yeah.
jurisdiction here, Mr. Vice Chairman. So I think the other professionals can speak to the municipal ordinance.
Okay.
I think I just want to comment on that, Mr. Chair. That's okay. I think that should be done as part of what would go into their approval with the general permit as well as actually with the individual permit. Hearing that they've got an individual permit, the definitions of stream corridors, streams for DEP, they probably should update their plan to show that they're meeting the township requirement. Remember, we had an application before, we had a hearing, we didn't have an individual permit. I have not seen what those conditions are, but understanding what those conditions are, they're probably just the same general conditions you typically get. That the township stream corridor should be updated immediately. Those plans should be submitted to us so we could go ahead and render a final letter for that in lieu of any type of application approval. So, Mr. Chair, we could do that as well. I think that would be extremely helpful. And there should be some clarification. I would ask the applicant to put clarification on that to show that they're meeting the stream corridor ordinance for the township.
Yeah, just again, as was said earlier, that we haven't heard this in a while, but I'm reviewing my own memo. It was noted the applicant is requesting waivers to permit stream corridor averaging for 18864D and to permit certain improvements within the stream corridor. So as part of their application, they were requesting stream corridor averaging.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
We're asking for a waiver, and that testimony will be presented by Ms. Cofone as the planner.
Okay.
Yeah, just for organization, because I'm looking at some of the correspondence and the dates, and here we are in December, just to refresh my memory. So I know there was an EC memo in July, and I saw a letter that you guys responded to on the 8th. So is somebody else going to go over that letter just for the record, or how do you want to organize?
Mr. Chair, I don't know what letter you're talking about, but certainly this witness is not going to do it.
So it was from M&M Realty Partners at Hillsborough, September 8th. It was addressed to Michael Foley.
I'm informed that we responded to the Environmental Commission on September 8th. We never heard anything back, and that's part of the record.
Yeah, so I guess my question is anyone going to go over that tonight?
No.
I would think.
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to get distracted here. Mr. Moriello is here.
Yep.
Well, I'm just talking
Any questions,
from,
Mr. Moriello?
that's why I'm asking the question, because he is bringing up environmental topics, so
No, he's
am
not.
I.
He's reporting on the status of DEP permits.
Right, so I'm asking you, was there anybody else that was going to address this letter?
No.
It was a common sense
The
question.
answer is
to ask.
no. If there are specific questions that you have, we will have people endeavor to answer them.
Okay.
We're not going to introduce any additional proof relative to that letter. We have a planner that's going to testify, and we have a traffic person that's going to testify. And we have Mr. Larkins here because Mr. Bernstein indicated there was an interest in having the LSRP here, so he's here. That's it. And Mr. Moriello has testified as to the status of the DEP permits. He's finished. If you have questions about those permits, or Mr. Hay has questions about them, he's here to answer them. He's not here as an expert. He's giving a fact, even though he was the commissioner of the DEP, but he's here to give fact testimony on behalf of the applicant. He's done that, and we're happy to answer any questions that relate to that.
Okay. So, Neil, you can, whenever the next witness comes up, I would just keep asking until.
Okay, I mean, that was my
And-
question.
So that was it. So this one's not going to do it. So we will see who else may be available, and then at the conclusion, definitely summarize any concerns that you might have in that response. So,
Okay.
but we will get to that. Okay. So I mean, if there's no more questions from the board, I'd like to entertain a motion to open to public.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. If there's anyone from the public that would like to cross-examine or question this witness on the testimony that they just gave, please come forward, state your name and address for the record, please.
Your office, Dirk 4 Hickory Hill Road. So I am not questioning testimony on the DEP. However, what I am questioning does have Mark Moriello's name on it, as well as John Larkin. So I believe it's part of any environmental testimony. In this regards, a document that was posted on the files in mid-November. So
There's a question directed at this
Okay.
witness.
So this is a long email string. Mr. Maskey asked in November Do you think we will receive a letter from the LSRP outlining the engineering controls in place to address any contamination issues in the site? This was agreed to at the last hearing. Actually, I think it might have been back in July, not even September. I don't know, but he was asking a follow-up question. So then there's a comment from Dave Auerbach, but then a comment from John Larkins. Gentlemen, there are no engineering controls required for the site. The former consultant conducted an investigation followed by remediation within the ISTER program. Can I finish my question, please, before
Well,
you stand
if
up?
there's a question for Mr. Moriello,
It is,
please
because
ask.
Mr. Moriello, I'm addressing Mr. Moriello because he's on.
Yeah, but did he write any of it? I don't know what she's looking at, Mr. Chairman. If Mr. Moriello made a statement on that, she's certainly entitled to ask about his
From
statement.
Mark Moriello. I am concerned about being able to ask.
Can you just ask the question without
Okay,
reading the
Cibolo Maskey
documentation?
raised this recently. We had John Larkin send him in their LSRP an email addressing any concerns. So this goes back, and attached to it is an email that goes back to 2014.
Okay.
November
Who's the
2000.
author of the email? Is it this witness?
He is in the string. He's the second to the last.
No, but is he a recipient, author, or
He's an interim
has a,
recipient.
so?
Did he
I-
say anything
One
that
thing
you
he
wanna-
said is what I just stated. See below, this is from Mark, from Mr. Moriello, excuse me. See below, Maskey raised this recently, and we had John Larkin send him and their LSRP an email that addressed any concerns. I'm asking a question about that email. So since Mark,
So ask,
part.
please
No
ask.
objection.
okay.
Please ask.
So my question is, the email has a unrestricted use response action outcome. And
That's not the email that he wrote. You read what he
it's
wrote.
all in this string.
I'm
This is How
sorry.
it was received.
There needs to be some decorum here. The fact that
Mhm.
somebody's on an email is not appropriate. I would ask you to seek counsel from Mr. Bernstein. Anything that Mr. Moriello said is certainly fair question.
Yeah,
But the
Understood.
fact that he's on an email chain, that other people are doing.
Is there something about his comments that he wrote in that email that you want to ask a question about?
No, there's something about what he referenced. And
Okay,
that,
well, but he's not the author of the referenced item. Unless there's something in that statement that he made.
no, but the author of this wrote in 2014, somebody
Okay,
who's not
but
involved anymore.
I
That's
know,
part of
but
the issue.
at this point
Yeah.
of this process, the hearing, is just questions of the witness. At the end, if, I don't know if the gentleman's here from 2014 that wrote that, could certainly be, directly questioned. Otherwise, at the end of, when all evidence has been presented and the public gets to comment their feelings on the application, you can certainly, raise any concerns,
Okay.
of that. But unless there's someone, that person is here that you can directly question.
Okay. Mr. Larkins is also on here, and I guess he's going to be available later, too.
If he's introduced as a witness, I don't know yet.
We do not intend to call Mr. Larkin. We
Okay.
have him here at the request of Mr. Bergstein. So to the extent that the board has questions of him,
Right.
they're entitled to ask those questions.
Okay.
We brought him here as a courtesy.
So if he's brought up, you certainly will be able to come up and cross-examine.
There's pages missing in here, so I think it's fairly important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Susan Gulliford, Hunt Club Road. Okay, Mr. Moriello, you just testified that there are, well, it's either 10 or 15 or 25 lots that are outside the sewer service area. Is that there is no line that goes in there? Or that they don't have the capacity for those extra lots? What, I don't understand. I'm not an engineer or anything else. What does it mean when it says it's outside the sewer service area?
What that means is that the approved sewer service for the site does not include 10 lots currently. So what it means is the remainder of this site is approved for sewer service, construction of sanitary sewers to serve that property. 10 lots are not currently included in that approved sewer service area. There is a process to amend the plans for sewer service area to add or modify those boundaries. And we've applied for the plan amendment to add those 10 lots that are currently outside of the sewer service area, to have those lots included. so that they can also be served by sanitary sewer.
Okay, why were they not included? That's the 10 that are on the north end near Hamilton, correct?
Mr. Chairman, I object to the question. She's asking why the DEP put the sewer service where it is. We have nothing to do with that.
Mr. Chairman, would you like me to opine on that and
Yes.
educate the public? So there happens to be a map that the DEP puts out basically annually. That map shows any type of sanitary sewer areas within the state that are serviced by regional sewage authorities. Okay, everything's broken down into sewer, basically regions. Those regions do not encompass the entire township in its entirety. They encompass only specific areas. Those maps are made available on the DEP website. If you were to go in and look at those maps, they're typically color coded. And they show those areas that happen to show what that sanitary sewers area are. They do also every year put out amendments and show where those amendments are made. So that usually does occur annually. Being involved with this, a regional sewage authority, I can tell you, it's done annually. They don't necessarily get to the updates. They haven't gotten the updates lately over the last few years. But I will tell you that the township is not fully covered, and that is why they are seeking the approval they need to seek, and that is extend that mapping, that boundary out to go ahead and encompass those additional lots they're seeking approval on.
Okay, so these DEP areas that are approved, why would they approve that?
Mr.
Approve
Chairman,
that
this is an
entire
opportunity to
area.
question this witness.
Why don't you let,
must
Mr.
object.
Wilson, why don't you let her get the question out before we?
She's not asking a question of this witness.
I'm going to allow her just to do that because this is what, you've been in front of Hillsborough Township enough times. We're a very transparent municipality, and we don't want to give the appearance things are being by the cover of darkness. And, you know, unless it gets to be too lengthy, then we will cut short. But I think this is an innocent enough follow-up clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Okay, since Mr. Hay addressed the question that I addressed, Mr. Moriello, why would an entire area like this with these 198 houses, lots, why would there be like one little area that's not approved? Do you?
Don't answer, Mr. Hay.
It's not.
Sorry.
I heard it. Okay, so it has nothing to do with wetlands or wanting to put septics in or anything. It's just asking to change. It's just asking to change this area that's allowed.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hay, just for the record, who provides that approval?
So that approval is provided by the DEP, and then it's also signed off on by the Regional Sewage Authority. The Hillsborough Township Sewage Authority is also notified about that as well, because they also have to have an upkeep of their maps as well for the sewer service area they have.
But to be clear, it's not this board nor the township.
It is not this board, it is not the township. It is basically the state, the regional, and then of course the local sewage authority.
Thank you.
Maria Janusik, 720 East Freck Avenue, Manville, New Jersey. I'm sorry, Mr. Moriello, what is your area of expertise? I don't know.
He's not an expert witness. He's a fact witness. He testified as to the status of DEP permits and applications.
Okay, but what is his, is he an engineer? Is he a, what have you?
He's a representative of Edgewood Properties. He's the director of environmental planning, and he testified as to the status of the DEP permits and applications.
So he's with your company,
Correct. He's with the parent company.
with the parent company, and he is the environmental what?
He's the director of environmental planning.
Director of Environmental Planning, Moriello, Mark Moriello?
That's correct.
Okay. You mentioned that you just recently received a freshwater letter of interpretation, LOI?
That was approved in December of 21, so a year ago.
Okay. Would you know if that's available to the members of the public to see that LOI?
It certainly is. Copies are provided to the borough. They're available from the DEP as well. It's public record.
Okay, well, not so much DEP, but if it's available as part of this application to anyone who attends these meetings, that's available. Flood hazard area, you say you got permits for that?
That's correct.
Okay, can you tell how much area is covered by the flood hazard area? I had an article from the paper that says the.
You want to ask the question about how much is covered? He'll answer that question.
Yeah, well, yeah, the site consists of 79 acres of wetlands.
Is that a question
Areas.
or is that a
So
statement?
how much
Mr. Chairman, I
is that?
object to the form. I know she's not a lawyer. One question at a time. And if she wants to read something and say, do you agree? I'm okay with that too.
Okay.
But she's asked him, how much is the acreage? And then she started reading from a newspaper article. So, is there a question? He'll answer it.
How much of this property is covered by freshwater wetlands?
I don't know the extent of wetlands on the entire property. I can tell you that the area of wetlands that are subject of the pending Freshwater Wetland Protection Act permit is less than 1 acre. That's the extent of wetlands that are proposed to be impacted by the application. I will tell you that the flood hazard area permit that you started to ask about covers the entire development that is subject of the application tonight before the board.
What we're calling the West Track?
Correct.
Okay, so the freshwater wetlands, you have a permit for 1 acre?
The application remains pending. We have not received the permit yet. We expect that will be issued this month.
But it's only for 1 acre?
Correct.
Okay, now the flood hazard area, can you explain a little bit on that? You need permits for that?
It's a regulated area by the DEP, and permits are required to develop within those regulated areas.
Okay, and so how many permits are required for that? Are there separate flood hazard areas that you need permits for each area?
One application, one permit for the entire project.
One application? Okay. So, let's see, I'm seeing here 80 acres of flood hazard area, and you just need one permit for like 80 acres of flood hazard area.
One permit is required, one application.
Okay, now in regard to the riparian application, what's the situation with that? How many permits you need for a riparian?
It's not a separate application. The riparian zones are evaluated in the context of the Flood Hazard Area Control Act permit application, and those were approved as part of that permit last month,
They were already approved?
October 24th, yes.
So the riparian is included with the flood hazard area?
Correct.
Okay. So you have permits for the riparian, you're waiting for freshwater, or you have that also?
The freshwater wetlands application is pending.
That's pending. And the flood hazard area? Flood hazard area, you have that?
Yes.
That's the one that was John's on.
Okay, and all of this is available with the application information that's provided to the public? All of these permits?
All the DEP permits are public record, and they're available, yes.
Okay. Can you explain a little bit about this overlap? There's 10 lots.
No,
Why don't you let her ask the
he
question?
did not
before you
testify
say
about an
no?
overlap. And he's not going to answer
This
questions
was
unless
brought
directed
up.
to do so.
I have notes
by the
here.
chair.
Mr. Wolfson.
Okay.
With all due respect, and I doubt you would have accepted this kind of when you were on the bench. Why don't you let her ask the question? If the question the witness can either not answer or is not within his purview, we can deal with it. But if you interrupt her in the middle, we're going to go through this twice to get to the same point.
Fair point.
Thank you.
Right, and I'm just going to direct the witness and any other witnesses, feel free to say that, you're unable to answer that question.
Thank you.
And we will move on.
If it's true.
Yes, of course.
Understood.
Okay, so what are we talking about in terms of this transition area that includes, one thing was 10 lots and there were 5 more lots. So there are 10 lots that are not in the sewer service area, and you're waiting for approval to have sewers for those 10 lots. So what is this 10 to 15 lot overlap? What does this 15 overlap mean?
Objection, Mr. Chairman.
Can the
This witness didn't
answer-
testify
Can
about
the-
any overlap. He did testify,
Right.
as was recounted by the questioner, that there are 10 lots outside the sewer service area for which we have an application pending to include it. He did testify about that.
The term overlap was mentioned, because I just wrote this.
Yeah, it was mentioned by somebody on the board, Mr.
Wilson.
Julian, I think.
Mr. Wilson, two parts. One, if you're going to testify, we're going to swear you in. Two, if that means you can't represent the client.
No, it doesn't.
Two, if Mr. Moriello can't answer it, why don't you have him just answer the question, so Pete, and we can move on to the next question as we continue to go down this road of not getting an answer to a question he can't answer.
Well, the problem with that, Mr. Chairman, is that there are questions that Mr. Moriello probably could answer within his expertise, and he doesn't want to say, I don't know the
Can he
answer to
answer?
that.
No,
But these are legal objections that you can overrule me on, but they're asking questions of him which are not part of his testimony.
for the purpose of the record, as Mr. Wilson is more than aware, the questions being asked by the public relate to the testimony of the witness, not his expertise beyond his testimony, not what he might feel like answering. It's related to what you asked him and he answered. If he can't answer that because it's not within his testimony or it's not within his understanding, then let him answer it. And we can keep the record moving other than making Mr. Lombardozzi a very rich man.
I understand, and your point is well taken, but he did not testify about any overlap. So
Then-
if you disagree or you want to overrule my objection, Mr. Chairman, you certainly have the power to do so, but I have the right and the obligation to make the record.
Granted, you do have the right, but if you're going to object, just please go right to and state under what grounds, so that, we don't have to have this silence trying to figure out what's going down. But I'm just going to let, the witness again, if you feel wasn't part of your testimony.
It was not. I didn't testify about an overlap or 15 lots.
Okay, because I have it in my notes, so it was discussed.
Okay.
In regard to the township's street corridor, mention was made that it needs to be updated. So how did you work on it if it needs to be updated?
That was not my comment, ma'am, so you'd have to direct
All
that
right,
to someone
so-
else.
So my understanding is that whatever is being done in the township stream corridor needs to be looked at, because that street corridor needs to be updated.
That was what our engineer says.
Mr. Maskey raised the issue, not Mr. Moriello.
Okay.
And if Mr. Maskey would like to clarify
Sure.
his comments.
The applicant is requesting a waiver in stream corridor averaging as it applies to the township stream corridor. I don't believe they placed any testimony on the record to that point yet. Correct?
In fact, I represented to the board, and Ms. Cofone will address that as part of her testimony.
Okay, so that is yet to be addressed by the applicant.
Okay, so this waiver, someone other than Mr. Moriello is going to.
That's what they just said. Ms. Cofone will,
Who?
that's what they just said.
Who's that?
I'll let them answer that.
Who's going to?
Ms. Cofone.
Ms. Cofone, okay. Also, there was a letter mentioned, I believe, to the Environmental Commission that Attorney Wolfson doesn't want to discuss. Is there going to be any?
To the witness.
To the witness. Don't
not
ask
to
us the
us.
There will be a
question.
It's
witness?
his testimony.
No.
His testimony, ask him questions.
Okay, all right, obviously I won't get an answer to that, but we'll have to get back to that letter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Albert Albanus, 42 Stonewood Drive. This is new to me.
Ma'am, you need to get a little closer to the
Okay, I'm
mic.
sorry. I've never been here before. And I apologize if I'm repeating something I just don't understand. There's 10 lots outside of the sewer area. And you want it included, but is there an extra, whatever you have to put in to build the sewers? Has that been included in the plan? How could you include it if there's no sewers? I may be confused, but I don't understand that.
I guess I would explain it this way. Currently, this sewer plan that's approved includes 188 of the dwellings that we propose to build.
Yes, I understand that.
The application pending before the DEP seeks to amend that plan to add those 10 lots into the plan so they can also be served by central sewer.
Okay, but if they're not served now, then somebody's got to build the sewer to those.
The sewer will be
Correct.
constructed as part of the overall development, ma'am.
All right.
Right.
So just for a little clarification for folks, when we say sewer service area, it doesn't mean it's currently sewered. So when the state drew these maps over the many years in concert with the counties and the regional sewage authorities, they said this is an area appropriate for sewers at some point in the future. So it could just be farmland, could be forest. So it doesn't mean there's sewers now. If somebody wants to build in there, obviously they have to install the piping and the treatment works. What they're asking to, 10 lots don't fit within that line, that boundary that DEP drew some years ago. What they're asking DEP to do is to extend that boundary so that those 10 lots are then encompassed. Obviously, they are responsible for sewering the entire development.
The
help?
applicant's responsible for that.
Yes, they would have to
Okay.
build the sewers,
Okay.
right?
Thank you.
Any other questions of this witness? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I get
Mr.
a
Chairman?
alibi on, because I see a letter here
Call
from
Mr.
DEP.
Seckler, please.
So I do see a letter from DEP that I wanted to ask
I'm
you
sorry.
about, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So, yeah, there was an email from Daniel Jones, DEP, to Mark, who's it, to Brian McPeak, right? So,
You have a date, Neil?
yeah, it's Tuesday, July 26, 2022. So I read this, have all these issues that the DEP addressed in this correspondence been reviewed, been kind of talked to with DEP, or has it been part of the process that you're going through in terms of waiting for some of these permits? Because I do see that the DEP talks about the Flood Hazard Act, and they do have questions. They're not clear on the plan, what area the site and those pertains to. There are issues that they do have here.
Is Mr. Moriello CC'd or the addressee on that letter?
Mark Harris's DEP.
So-
It was to Brian
So,
McPeak and Ron
Mr. Chairman, I'll
Hallback.
object to the question, but if Mr. Moriello can answer it.
Yeah, I think I can address, I don't know that exact letter. Danielle Jones is the case manager at DEP who handled the flood hazard permit. Brian McPeak is the consultant that we retain to prepare the application and interact with DEP. By virtue of the fact that that permit was approved on October 24th of this year, I think that demonstrates that any outstanding questions were resolved to the satisfaction of the case manager and the department.
Yeah, that would be my question.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Gilliam. Mr. Seckler?
Yeah, 26.
Yes, I do. My name is Matthew Seckler. That's Seckler. My address is 92 Park Avenue, Rutherford, New Jersey. I'm with Stonefield Engineering Design.
Mr. Seckler, would you briefly give the chair and the members of the planning board, the public, the benefit briefly of your qualifications in the
Yeah.
area of traffic expertise?
Sure. I have a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from Union College in Schenectady, New York, a Master's in City and Regional Planning from Rutgers University, a licensed professional engineer in the state, also recognized professional traffic operations engineer by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, been accepted before over 150 boards in the state of New Jersey as a traffic engineer, including, I believe, the zoning board and planning board on previous applications in the township.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask the board to recognize Mr. Seckler as an expert in traffic engineering.
Okay, and all your credentials are still in good standing?
Yes, they are.
Okay, any objections from the board? Okay, there are none, and I'm just going to give you a heads up. You got the most powerful mic, so you don't have to be as close because you nearly blew Kaz's ears off. So,
Everyone else seems so quiet, so I
No.
apologize.
He projects well.
All right, now, Mr. Seckler, I understand we're dealing with a and court-ordered conceptual plan that's been approved in detail by the township, by the board, its professionals and us, and it's conforming in terms of its use and density. But we did ask you to do a traffic analysis related to the site, did we not?
Yes, you did.
Can you give the board and the public the benefit of your analysis?
Certainly. And the most recent traffic impact study we prepared was dated August 30th, 2022. That included a number of revisions to address comments raised by the board's professionals. And again, this iterative process, I think, helped create a traffic report that I believe addresses all the necessary aspects of a application like this before the planning board that is a conforming application in terms of intensity. Included within the traffic impact study were earlier counts that were conducted back in 2018 and 2019 that was then updated per the request of the board's engineer to include counts that were conducted in 2022 at both frontages of the site, which again is both Falcon and Hamilton, as well as the intersection, the newly lit intersection, new signalized intersection at Falcon and Sunnymead. Those intersections were analyzed as part of this traffic study, both looking at the existing count volume that goes through those intersections, proposed traffic volume going through those intersections independent of this project. So that includes applications that have been approved but have not yet fully built. Again, there's a number of developments in the vicinity of this site that is also going to be adding traffic in the future. And then lastly, included the traffic added to the general roadways around the site based on this development. We utilize the standard publications, which is the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual, to project the traffic for this development. Again, this is development that has a number of access points, 3 of which on Falcon, 1 of which onto Hamilton. We distributed the traffic based on what we see as the existing travel patterns on those roads. So if most people go, let's say, to the east in the morning, we assume our traffic would be mainly going to the east and then basically distributed through the network accordingly. We analyzed the nearby intersections of the site driveways and found that all those intersections will operate at acceptable levels of service, generally at levels of service that would have delays of less than 20 to 25 seconds, even during the busiest peak hours. Obviously, those higher level or these 20 to 25 second delays are likely for left turns. Those are the most challenging terms in terms of delay. But I will say we reviewed the sight lines, the sight triangles, the ability to see out of these proposed driveways, and there's adequate sight distance coming out of every one of these driveways. So I could confirm that not only is there not a traffic impact as it relates to trip generation, but also the driveways have been designed safely and appropriately. Within the site, you heard from the site engineer, but just to confirm and reiterate, the internal driveways, roadways have all been designed to meet the residential site improvement standards. So those are standard design roadways throughout the site, and again, meet industry standard and have been designed appropriately per a typical residential design. So overall, again, I can conclude from the study, and again, through the number of iterations we prepared, that a traffic impact study has been prepared that meets the typical standards for a residential development of this size, and there is not a substantial impact on delay, and the driveway designs have been designed appropriately for safe and safe access.
That would be our testimony, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Great.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Matt, just want to make sure I understand. In our letter that we had dated back in July, we had asked you to do an update in 2019 to current conditions or what have you. What was the change between 2019 and 2022? I'm assuming it was de minimis or it was a decrease.
There were some approaches that actually went down, some approaches that went up. But again, it was basically de minimis. The levels of service, the delays, ranged maybe 5 seconds worse in one condition, 5 seconds better in the other condition, but really de minimis with no substantial change.
And what was the current level of service on the adjacent roadway that you looked at?
Well, again, the actual one that had the worst delay was what became signalized at the intersection of Falcon and Sunnymead. That one was a level of service E, but with the signal now operates a level of service C, generally a 25 to 30 second delay to make those left turns. It'll remain within a couple seconds of that, even with our development built and the nearby developments to the north of Hamilton, Falcon being built as well.
Okay, and you testified was you'll be able to go ahead and provide a TIS, an updated TIS for us to review, further comment on?
Yes, again, if that was not submitted to the board, it obviously will be. We have prepared one. I thought it was submitted, so.
Mr. Chair, just so you understand, so level service E is acceptable, and going to a level service C, that's a vast improvement, obviously, when you put a signalized intersection in. All I would ask is that this application be acted on by the board as an approval. I would ask the board condition a TIS to be updated. Any further comment that we have, we would put in as additional conditions later on as we go through compliance. Otherwise, I'm acceptive of the applicant's testimony and what he's reported. Thank you.
Are you good with that condition?
I don't see how I
If it
could
comes up.
oppose it. Mr. Hay has never asked for anything that's unreasonable.
David, anything from you? Okay, board members.
I have a question about
Microphone. You don't have.
level of service.
Yes.
Is the level of service, when it's calculated, is it in all directions or the worst case at any given time?
So we look at the worst time of day, but we also do level of service by movement. So we will look at a left turn, give it a grade, a right turn, give it a grade, through, give it a grade. And then if it's a signalized intersection, we give it an overall, basically weighted average. So right turns, basically level of service A. The left turns, you would see a little higher level.
Okay, and you said Sunnymead, Falcon and Sunnymead went from an E to a C with the signal installed?
Exactly. The left turn was projected to be difficult from Falcon.
It always was.
Yes.
Is any level of service unacceptable?
That we studied or generally in traffic?
Generally in traffic, because you mentioned A and F,
Yeah.
and obviously we fall somewhere in between.
Yeah, these intersections are between A and C. Level of service F is considered overcapacity. Now, I don't want to get too deep into it, but a level of service F in New York City may still be acceptable because it, is just a congested area. Typical areas like this, I think level of service F would be unacceptable if you were on these type of collector roads.
80 seconds is a long time.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. Anyone from the public that would like to ask this witness any questions, cross-examine him on his testimony that he just provided? And again, to remember just to state your name and address for the record, even if you did it before.
Susan Gulliford, Hunt Club Road. You did say you considered upcoming and additional traffic that had come up. When you did your traffic study and provided your numbers, is that only for the west? Is this only for the west tract, or is that the west and the proposed east tract? And what about the upcoming Toll Brothers at the golf course?
We included in this traffic study solely the west tract for this area. There was another development, and I believe it was the later phases of the gateway at Royce Brook that was also included. That was a recommendation by the board's engineer to include.
So you'll have a separate study then later when the east tract comes up?
Yes.
Thank you.
Maria Janusik, 720 East Freck Avenue. When you do this traffic study, are you counting vehicles? How are you conducting this traffic study?
Counts are done by counting vehicles. It can be done manually or by a camera that then is watched back at the office.
So how was yours done?
This one was done using a camera that was then watched back at the office, so we could watch it in faster speed.
Where do you set up this camera?
The cameras are normally set up on utility poles or signal poles that are nearby.
And how many cameras do you have for this study?
This study, we would have had a total of 3 sets of cameras.
Okay. And so how many vehicles, like the busiest time of day, what was your count? All 3 cameras.
For instance, on Falcon Road, during the busiest hours, you typically would see about 800 to 900 cars counting the two directions. Hamilton Road, that would be in the evening. Hamilton Road ranges in about 400 to 600, depending on the hour, the busiest hours. And obviously, the intersection of Sunnymead has some of that Falcon Road traffic, plus Sunnymead is about 500 vehicles on Sunnymead. Some of those are turning onto Falcon and getting double counted, obviously.
Okay, so that's the count that you have right now. So now, what would be projected based on what's going to be built?
This development would add about 145 vehicles in the busiest hour in the morning. Again, not all those vehicles are going out on one street because the development is actually segregated into a portion near Falcon and a portion near Hamilton.
So what was that count again? How much?
145 in the morning peak hour,
145. And how many homes are going to be built?
198.
So, okay, now are you taking into consideration also that there's a warehouse application and there would be other traffic coming in for that development?
We utilized, your board's engineer provided us what they felt was nearby developments that have been approved that would potentially add traffic to this corridor. That is what we included within our study. We also apply a growth rate factor, which the Department of Transportation provides, that projects increase of traffic just from general development in nearby areas.
Okay, so, but that's not included in what you've presented?
No, both of those, it's not included the 145 number, but it is included with how we calculate delays and level of service.
Delays and level of service, but you don't have a count of projected traffic?
The projected traffic is what we counted, plus the trip generation from this site, plus trip generation of other developments that your engineer or the board's engineers suggested to include, and a growth rate factor the Department of Transportation includes. All that gets summed up to a projection.
Okay, is that in your traffic study?
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions of this witness?
There's one. Yeah, just when you're driving out the exit onto Hamilton Road, when you look to the left, that's where the overpass is. Was there a review or the distance to the overpass, if people coming over that overpass, is that part of your analysis? And can you comment on that?
Yes, we reviewed the site distance out there to ensure that you had proper visibility with any type of obstructions, vertical or horizontal. So yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay. We're good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With your permission, I'll call Ms. Cofone, who's suffering from a cold or flu. So for your protection, she's going to wear a mask.
Yeah.
And mine.
Even though I've had my flu shot and my fourth booster, somehow I'm still a little under the weather.
You swear testimony you give tonight is going to be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
For the record, could you state your name, please?
Yes, I can. It's Christine Mazzaro, Nazzaro, Cofone, C-O-F as in Frank, O-N-E. Business address is 125 Half Mile Road, Suite 200, Red Bank, New Jersey, 07701. I have testified here in Hillsborough as well as, probably about 450 other planning and zoning boards throughout the state of New Jersey. I am a court-appointed affordable housing special master sitting in about 24 communities. I teach planning and zoning courses for the Rutgers Center for Government Services. I have been practicing for almost 28 years now, and my licenses are current and valid.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask the board to recognize Ms. Cofone as an expert in the field of planning.
Any objections?
I think we can accept
Thank you.
Look, I'm offering it up because we have some.
Yeah, many Zooms under my belt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Please
Thank you very
continue.
much. Ms. Cofone, you were retained to review what essentially is a completely conforming application, but there are some waivers, and I think there's one variance relating to the tree removal issue that's been identified, I think by Mr. Maskey, in fact. Could you go through your analysis with regard to those items and present what testimony you have as to whether you think those waivers and or variance should be granted, whether it satisfies the positive and negative criteria under the statutes.
Yes, so when Mr. Wolfson indicates that this is a completely conforming application, what he is alluding to is that this is a permitted use in the R8A zone where the subject property is located. And as Mr. Maskey, your board professional, points out in his June 2nd, 2022 review letter, that there are no bulk variances associated with the application. So what that means is that we're a permitted use in the zone and we meet all of the bulk criteria with respect to the lot size, the lot frontage, the side yard setbacks, the rear yard setbacks, the coverage, the height of the structures, the number of stories, and all of those other bulk criteria that you put in your R8 zone for the development of these single-family homes. Moreover, when you look at the stated purpose of the RA zone, it reads that the purpose of it enumerates other districts, but it includes the R8A, is to establish a distribution of population density throughout the township in relation to existing and prospective facilities, a convenient street system, employment areas, and reasonable predictability of population growth. The standards are intended to offer maximum flexibility in site design and the selection of dwelling unit types in order to offer a balanced housing pattern attractive to all income and age segments of the community as part of the township's fair share of meeting the region's low and moderate income housing needs. So that becomes very important because this is one of the sites that you as a community identified for the production and generation of affordable housing. So it becomes a very important site. As a court master, I would say that this is a very important component of your housing plan, and we comply, like I said, in all respects with the bulk criteria that you set forth. We do need a few waivers and one variance. The one variance that we're seeking is identified in Mr. Maskey's letter, and we are asking for, on page 4 of his letter, he indicates that we are asking for a variance for the tree mitigation. Now, you'll see also in his letter in the paragraph before that, he indicates that we're asking for a waiver for the removal of trees outside of the critical footprint area. We have eliminated that waiver. We are no longer seeking to exceed the 20% requirement of tree removal, so we do conform with that. We submitted revised plans to this board to indicate compliance. So we are removing trees, and we are required to replace them in the tune of thousands, and we're not replacing. That's where the replacement require a variance for that. So we're removing a certain amount of trees from the property. Your ordinance requires that we replace those with like species, and we're not complying with that. So that does need a variance. Now, I'm sure the public is interested to know why we are not doing that, and this is an affordable housing development, and in chapter 5:93 of the rules, the COA rules, one of the things it talks about is reviewing cost generative features, and specifically section 5:93-10(2) A6 talks about excessive landscaping, buffering, and reforestation requirements. So we are asking to seek that waiver. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not replacing or we're not going to have any landscaping or street trees, because we certainly are. But your ordinance doesn't allow us to count those for our tree mitigation. So we are.
Could I ask what percentage you're going to get down to below 20%?
I don't have an answer for you for that. I know we are going to comply with the ordinance with respect to removal. As far as what percentage below 20, I don't know the answer to that. If Mr. Ollenbach is here and can get that answer for us, we can probably get it for you. I don't have I stopped at conforming. So we got to conforming, so that's that. So I think, so again, and right in the settlement agreement, that you reached with this developer, there's a statement in there that reads, the planning board will not impose unreasonable cost-generating development standards and or requirements. So I think that's certainly the tree mitigation.
You want to cite where, Ms. Cafone?
Sure, I can. It's on page 10, paragraph F of your settlement agreement. And that settlement agreement is dated October 15th of 2019.
It should also be pointed out that every other affordable housing project we have had has complied with this and have not considered this cost generative. This would be unique.
Every site.
And for the purposes of the record, the statement in there is unreasonable cost generating, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
unreasonably cost-generating development standards and/or requirements.
So are you planning to replace any of the 1,900 trees?
Well, right now, we're not proposing any tree replacement. And again, your ordinance, and I think, I don't want it to be misleading in that we're not putting any trees on, because we are, but you just cannot count the street trees as part of the tree
Correct.
mitigation. So it sounds unfairly prejudicial and harsh.
Well, it's not, because
not.
it's applied across the board to every development in town and every affordable housing project. It is not
Well,
discriminatory
each
to
case
this
has to rise and
application.
fall on its own merits, and some sites
You're cutting
are
down
more.
2,000 trees.
Testifying, the properties that may or may not be similar to ours and wooded as ours are.
Mr. Wilson, Ms. Cafonis testified that it is unreasonably cost generative, and when the question is asked, how many trees are you going to cut down and how many trees are you going to replace, the answer is, I don't know.
But we got a technical issue. Your mic's not working.
No,
Mr. Wilson.
the answer that I didn't know was how far below the 20% are we going to get? You're mixing apples and oranges. It's two different sections of the ordinance. One section of the ordinance indicates that you can't remove more than 20%. Previously, we were asking for 22.3. If I understood Mr. Julian's question correctly, it was how far below our 20% are you? And that's what I said I didn't know. The answer to your question as far as how many trees are we removing, it was previously 1,995. We have since reduced that. I'm sure Mr. Ollenbach can get us an exact number. And as far as replacement, we're proposing 0.
Mr. Wilson, you got to switch mic, sorry. I'm getting.
I think Mr. Mansky sabotaged it.
Pick up that one. But problem is, you're asking for a waiver.
For the record,
Just for clarification, there are 3 levels to this tree mitigation request that's being made. One is they're requesting a waiver for removal of trees outside of the critical footprint area. I haven't heard anything that changes that, so they need a waiver from that. You're not allowed to remove more than 20%. It's been testified that they will be under the 20%. They don't need that, but they still need the variance because they're not replacing any trees. So they need a waiver for removing trees outside of the critical footprint area and a variance for not replacing any of the 1,955 trees.
so the response to what I thought the question was, is correct. The request is a waiver from the provision to replace the trees. That doesn't mean we're unwilling to put trees in addition to those that are not being counted by virtue of the definition of the ordinance. I'm authorized by ownership to offer a replacement of 500 trees, not in addition to everything else that's being put onto the landscaping. So although there's a request for a waiver and technically it's a 0, that's not our intent. We really don't want to do that. And with regard to Mr. Maskey's testimony about other applications, I'm not questioning what he's saying is inaccurate or accurate. I'm sure it's truthful. The problem is every site is different. So one site has a lot of trees, one site has a few trees. If you're eliminating a few trees, it's not a cost-generating problem. If you have a site like ours, which is heavily, heavily wooded, and it's a settlement site where you've asked us to do single-family lots as opposed to multifamily where we could cluster them down, this is a plan that you approved. So in order to have those lots, the trees have to come down to put the houses down. So we think that would be an undue cost-generating effect on this property. If the board feels otherwise, the board are the judges. They get to decide. Mr. Maskey's correct. If to the extent that others haven't complained about it, I suppose you can take that into consideration in connection with whether you think it's an unduly cost-generating area. We think it is for those reasons, but we're not looking for a 0, as I indicated. I was authorized by ownership only a few hours ago to come forth to you and say, no, we'll do 500 trees. We're not looking to get away from this scot-free.
Okay, and the requirement is 4,562 trees.
Yeah.
You're saying they're going to replace 500, just so you know.
And how many shade trees are shown in? I mean,
Do you know how many shades?
You want to swear?
Well,
Ms.
I'm not sure that the requirement would be 4,562, Mr. Maskey. And I'm not sure that it's not either, but here is my issue. Your letter was predicated on us removing the 22.2%. So presumptively, if we eliminated that variance, I would think that number of 4,562 should go down a little bit.
Could.
because this letter was predicated on us asking for that
Mhm.
variance. So we would need to recalculate it. I mean, again, it's still, we're authorized to allow 500. It's going to be a variance. There's going to be a delta there. But I want the record to be clear. I don't think it's going to be 4,562. If we eliminate that variance or that waiver for the percentage over 20%, then that number would have to go down.
But that's a function of 198 or 188 single-family houses.
Right, and the other thing that I would say is, and each case does have to rise and fall on its own merits, and I appreciate, I've worked on other affordable housing sites in town, so I'm certainly aware that they have complied. We did attach the concept plan that's before the board this evening to our settlement agreement. So the fact that the trees have to come down should not be a surprise to anybody, because this is the plan that was appended to the settlement agreement that was agreed to.
It's not a
No, but
surprise.
I don't think the question is whether, I think we understand they have to come down. The question is, there's not any being replaced.
Sure, of
All
course,
right,
and I
so-
understand that. And
so-
Mr. Wilson just indicated that we have authorization to offer
Understood.
500. If the board feels that that's not enough or a comfortable number, I suppose we'll have to talk about that.
Okay, so can I, how many,
So I got some numbers for you.
okay, good.
To the microphone.
4,000 numbers.
Microphone, please.
Sorry. The 4,000, no one usually accuses me of being soft. The 4,000 number, which was based on the 22%, based on the change, the plan is 3,500 plus or minus. And the number of shade trees, I think that, I don't know, Mr. Delcor, did you ask that question?
I did.
There was 680 additional trees that we're planting. So it would be 680.
That math doesn't seem to work though,
I'm not sure what that
Mr.
means.
Well, we go from 22% at 4562, and now we're at 20, and we're going down,
Oh, below 20. I don't know what the actual
Okay.
number is.
well, it's gotta be well below 20 then, I would,
What's the-
just by straight ratio, right?
The exact number is 3577. So I said.
Okay, so your 20% is probably closer now to 15?
18, I believe Mr. Ollenbach is saying that it's about 18%. So we went from almost 23% because it was previously the relief was, just almost 22 and a half, 22.36, and now we're at 18%. So we went from previously asking to remove 1,955 trees with a replacement value of 4,562. And now we are removing how many trees, Mr. Ollenbach?
3577.
No, that's the replacement. We're not removing 3577. That's, it can't be, because we were
Yeah.
removing 1,995 last time. All right.
We'll get back to that.
And it's
Continue on,
and the
Justin.
replacement of the shade trees that you asked about is 680, plus I was authorized to offer.
Okay, so there's 680 shade trees being, in the plan, okay.
Right, and
Your ordinance, they don't count.
I understand, trying to understand the number. I got it, thank you.
then right now, we would stand at 680, but they don't count against our mitigation.
Understood.
So we have 500 counting against our mitigation, which right now, our mitigation number is 3,577. So we're short roughly 3,000 trees.
Okay.
So that's the only variance relief that's required. We do need some other waivers. As Mr. Maskey points out on page 3 of his report, we need a waiver for the creation of 10 through lots. Now, the way the ordinance is structured, it reads that, and we have 5 of them on Falcon and 5 of them on Hamilton. So I don't know if you want to pull that up, but essentially what a through lot is, it's a lot that has frontage on 2 roads. And the Hillsborough ordinance states that
Why don't we
Mark
let's
this.
mark this? A2, thank you,
A2.
Michael.
so
Why don't
along.
you indicate, Ms. Cafone, what A2 represents, please?
So what A2 in evidence is it shows the proposed subdivision with the lots that are the through lots in the top left-hand corner or the northern portion of the site. And you see that there's a road coming in off of Falcon, and there is a road circulating through the development. The lots that will have frontage on Falcon will essentially be their backyards, as they will be accessed off the internal road from the subdivision. So the way the ordinance reads in Hillsborough is that in accordance with section 18858, through lots are only permitted under the following conditions. And there's 3 conditions and we have a slight issue with the one condition. The first is that where the lots abuts an arterial or collector street and a planting area is provided as set forth in section 18889 streets. Now, that requirement is that we have a 25-foot buffer area along the roadway. The other two sections of that for the creation of through lots include where the length of the lot between both streets is of such length that the future division of the lots into two lots is improbable. So of course, that would be fine here. The lots along Falcon are about 100 feet deep. The 5 lots on Hamilton, which you can't see on this, you would have to zoom out to see the other portion of the subdivision on Hamilton. They're 160, and we could actually comply with this requirement along Hamilton. Oh, I can do this. Okay. So here are the 5 lots along Falcon, 1, 2, 3.
Not up higher.
That they have right over there. You can see they have frontage on Falcon and then frontage on the interior road. And these lots are 100 feet of depth. So if we have the 25-foot buffer requirement, you're going to really impact the usable yards of these areas. And this condition is impacted by the fact that we had to do a right-of-way dedication along Falcon of approximately 33 feet. So you need to take this 25-foot buffer from the right-of-way. So there becomes a little bit of a situation here, or a unique situation impacting this piece of property where we had a right-of-way dedication. The lots are about 100 feet deep. And that's what the through lot is. It has frontage on Falcon, frontage on the new road. The lots are 100 feet deep, complicated by the 30-foot right-of-way dedication along Falcon. But 2 of the 3 conditions applicable to the through lots is that where the length of the lot between both streets is of such length that future division of the lots into 2 lots is improbable. I mean, there was no way you could further subdivide this, so we have no issue with that. And then where access shall be to one street only, which street shall be the one with the lower traffic function. So certainly we only have access to one street. So we're substantially consistent with the ordinance as far as the creation of through lots. And I would submit to the board that the condition that we're proposing along Falcon is really no different, that if you zoom out along Hamilton, right now we are also proposing this condition along Hamilton where we have, oh, it's so hard to see that now. The same condition exists along Hamilton. The difference over here is that these, you can't even see it though. Right.
Excuse me. Which one? That's the development, that's the second, that's the other phase. So that's gonna have access to Hamilton Road, the other ones are gonna have access to Falcon because there's wetlands to go to the street.
Right. So, and we really could comply on Hamilton because these lots are 160. Right. It's so tiny when you pull it out.
It's just a border line. Yes.
Oh, thank you so much.
There you
Look at, there you go, okay. But I want to be able to see Point View, North Point View down the street. So here are the lots on Hamilton, which again, it's 5 of them that are through lots. These lots are deeper though, they're 160 feet, so we could comply here, I think. So really the waiver would just be along Falcon, because I believe we can comply with the 25 feet here. And I would submit to the board, if you were looking to find a situation that was similar to this, if you went a little to the west of our development along Falcon, and you saw those homes along North Point View, where there is a large white board-on-board fence there, there's a sidewalk along Hamilton, those lots are through lots. Their backyard is abutting Hamilton, and they're oriented to North Point View. And there are 5 of them actually that are through lots very similar to this. So it's just a simple condition of the fact that you've got the lots fronting on 2 roads. So that's a waiver. And again, the test for the waiver, unlike the variances where you have to substantiate under the bulk criteria, the test for the waiver is really to just an acknowledgement by the board that the condition of the property is satisfactory and meets the requirements of the local ordinance. So I think when you unpack that and you look at your ordinance for through lots, you can conclude that the program that's being proposed by the applicant will not result in lots that can be further subdividable, will result in lots that are only accessible from one road. And as far as those 5 on Falcon, we could probably provide a 10-foot buffer there, which is certainly, in my opinion, given the fact that Falcon is really not, it's a 2-lane road, it's got no sidewalks on either side of it. I think a 10-foot buffer would be appropriate back there and balance still letting the lots have a usable yard area. The only other waiver relief that we're seeking in conjunction with this application is the stream corridor waiver, and we spoke about that a little bit earlier in the evening. The stream corridor, we're asking for relief. I can't deal with this. It's in the top. Thank you. And the ordinance in Hillsborough certainly does make an allowance for us to have encroachments into the stream corridors. Specifically, section 18864, natural features, deals with location of activities and tracks partially within stream corridors. And what that section of the ordinance reads is that in section 18864, it's D3B1, is that all new lots created by minor or major subdivision, as well as the subject of a site plan application, shall be designed to provide sufficient areas outside of the stream corridors to accommodate primary structures as well as any normal accessory uses are pertinent here too. So we have about 14 lots in a section of the subdivision off of Falcon Road that will be in the stream corridor. They are highlighted on the screen in the green shaded area. So you can see them at the top right-hand corner of the stream of the subdivision. And those are the lots that are located in the stream corridor buffer. In addition, this section of the ordinance makes an allowance for certain structures to be located in the stream corridor. And the way the ordinance reads is that waiver required for activities permitted in stream corridors where there is no reasonable or prudent alternative subject to a waiver by the board having jurisdiction. In a stream corridor, when subdivision or site plan cannot be designed in the manner set forth above, or in the case of pre-existing lots, it goes on to say the following activities are permitted subject to conformance with best management practices. And of those things, there are sanitary storm stores and detention or retention basins, which are items 7 and 10, which we are proposing to be located in the stream corridor. So I would submit to the board that, as Mr. Moriello indicated to you earlier, we do have our flood hazard permits. This was a subdivision layout that was appended to the settlement agreement, and your ordinance makes a significant or a specific recognition that in some instances, you do have these properties that have stream corridors on them, and that mitigation and then that buffering and averaging is appropriate. And I think the applicant is certainly entitled to some reasonable relief to allow a very small percentage of the lots in conjunction with this subdivision to implement the affordable housing plan to be located in the stream corridor buffer. And I think the fact that the permit has been issued by the DEP can give the board comfort that there's no adverse impact associated with these lots being in the stream corridor buffer. So that is the extent of the variance relief associated with this.
Can I just interrupt? Could you just, for the board's edification, talk about how many acres are being reduced and where they're being averaged out and indicated on the exhibit perhaps?
So that, I think, I'm not sure that I can answer that question for you. I think we have another witness that will have to do that. Our engineer will answer that question for you. Okay.
That's good, thank you. So could you just, and I'm not sure if Ms. Caffone can answer this, or the engineer, indicate how many acres are being taken away, which would be the green area, I believe, and how many are being
So
replaced
the
in the blue area.
2.96 then is the reduction area, and then the compensation area is 7.2 acres. So
Okay. Now, the reduction area is 15 lots and the 15 lots that are involved. It's my understanding they are the same, this is the same property that's pending the transition area averaging in front of DEP, correct? I'm not sure if you can answer that.
I'm informed by Mr. Albert. Correct.
Okay, so just so the board, these, you heard all the testimony before about the DEP permit that's being requested. It's a similar case where they're looking for averaging from DEP. It overlays our stream corridor averaging the same way. And so even if you approved it, let's say, and DEP denied it, it wouldn't fly.
But that was something that we talked about earlier. It said that you guys are going to update that and Mr. Hay is going to review that. That was the buffer averaging, kind of being incorporated into the stormwater plan submitted with DEP, correct?
I believe he said as a condition of approval.
Yeah, that was, I had stated that as a potential, condition of approval. As far as stormwater is concerned, the individual permit for flood hazard should have covered that already, because if they received the individual permit at the end of October, DEP retained jurisdiction to look at their stormwater plan. That's already been reviewed. Wetlands is not going to be part of that. Wetlands Bureau will not look at that. They will only look at whether or not the averaging plan or any waivers are appropriate.
Right, yeah, we're talking about the buffer averaging.
So what condition are you seeking, Mr. Hay?
The condition that I'm seeking, or that I had stated before, was that if they get approval from the DEP, from the Bureau of Wetlands for any transition area averaging or waivers, the board accept that. And if there's any conditions on that approval, that be subject to our review and our approval. Because there can be conditions, as the applicant knows, that I would have to look at, and then obviously look at the mechanics of that and how that might affect the subdivision.
And then what would happen if DEP doesn't?
So Mr. Maskew is correct. If it doesn't work, the entire township, it becomes moot. It's a moot question, because if they can't get an averaging from the state, they will not be able to get an averaging from the township.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear on that.
That being both a waiver and an averaging plan, and/or.
Right. Okay.
And again, I think it's just important to understand that this concept plan was appended to the settlement agreement, and this is necessary, in my opinion, to implement the township's affordable housing plan. So I certainly think that the one variance that we're asking for, the board can look at as criteria, promoting criteria A of the land use law, which talks about promoting the general welfare. And I think when you look at the negative criteria doesn't ask you to hold us or any other applicant to a standard that there be no detriment, just that the benefit of the grant and the variance relief outweigh any detriment. And I think here you have an applicant who certainly has made a proffer this evening to provide 500 trees, to provide, and again, the way your ordinance is structured, we can't take credit for our street trees that we're proposing. So it's not as if we're looking to get out from under, providing trees in conjunction with this application. So I think that you have a substantially conforming application with the ordinances that you created to generate your constitutionally mandated obligation to provide affordable housing. And I think that the waiver relief is reasonable and meets the spirit and intent of the ordinance.
Wasn't there a sidewalk on Falcon that was going to be put in at some point?
There is not a sidewalk on Falcon right now.
But there supposed to be?
The sidewalk's being installed by Premier.
Yeah. But does that
People
affect
across the
anything
street.
that we were talking about? Because I know we talked about there's no sidewalk.
There are no sidewalks in Falcon.
So that's Premier's sidewalks.
Premier is required as part of their development. They have to reconstruct Falcon Road from end to end, really, pretty much.
Will the sidewalks be on both sides, I guess that's.
I don't believe so, no.
Just one side.
No. Yeah, and it would get up to the shopping center.
I think it's
basically.
on the side that we're talking about though, so I don't know if it affects.
Yeah, I believe so. It doesn't, not to get off this subject, but it It doesn't go on the side that the premier development is. There's a crosswalk that would come across Falcon, and then you go up towards Lowe's.
Just what I remember. The sidewalk would be in the easement part of the property anyway, right? The buffer area, essentially.
Which,
Well, the sidewalk, if it was on that side, would be right next to the road.
yeah. Yes. There are some sign variances you need. You're going to testify about
We
this?
eliminated the request for those, I believe.
So you're removing, you're only going to have one sign on Falcon? And you're not going to have the signs in the people's backyards?
Correct.
They're all gone. So you only have one sign on Falcon?
Unless it doesn't need a
I'm sorry,
variance.
we should be talking.
Yeah.
this-
Unless it doesn't need a variance.
No, you're allowed one, you're allowed one sign on Falcon. So my understanding is you will be providing one sign, not two, first of
Correct.
all. And there will be no signs located in any of the side or rear yards of the single-family.
Correct. We have
Okay.
removed the
Okay.
signs that require variance relief from the
Got it.
application.
Got it. And there's just one more comment, because this comes up a lot. You hear reference to a concept plan that's attached to a settlement agreement. Concept plans are not fully engineered plans. And the board we've had this discussion before with other applications, they are not fully engineered. So you're not approved, that concept plan was not an approved full.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, I will read to you what the settlement agreement actually says. And it says, the planning board understands that the intent of the settlement
Let's
agreement,
start with page and paragraph, Mr. Wilson.
page 11, paragraph G,
Thank you.
no, my mistake. The planning board understands that the intent of the settlement agreement is to develop the M&M parcel in accordance with the proposed zoning ordinance and substantially consistent with the concept plan and to ensure development of the applicable AHUs on the Sherman parcel, except for minor variances and minor waivers resulting from final engineering design of the development. The proposed zoning ordinance and concept plan have been extensively reviewed by municipal officials, professionals, and consultants, and the parties have agreed that the proposed layout should be substantially consistent with the proposed zoning ordinance and concept plan as to the M&M parcel, except for minor variances and minor waivers resulting from the final engineering design of the development. I think that's a big part of what Ms. Cofone is talking about here. You designed the layout of the subdivision. It's a single-family subdivision. It's not the typical affordable housing project that you may have had before you that Mr. Maskey referred to. And if I'm wrong, Mr. Maskey should correct me. I suspect that none of the other affordable housing projects are
No,
exclusively single-family homes.
Actually, I'll correct. The settlement agreements all call for similar type of language, which the magic phraseology substantially compliant, because everybody has a concept plan when we agree to these things, and nothing is fully engineered. So the phraseology is substantially compliant. This project may be substantially compliant with the concept plan proposed, but the concept plan in and of itself is not the be-all and end-all if it doesn't meet all the requirements. That's the point. I also wish to point out for the board that while Ms. Cofone keeps talking about affordable housing, it isn't on this site.
I think at this point, we're going to take a short recess because Mike's been typing away well over an hour and a half, so.
Chairman, can I just, before we do that, maybe just quickly, one thing?
All right.
Just to, Mr. Fong, correct me if I'm wrong, on any of these. So you need a waiver to fit through lots.
Microphone, Mike.
Oh, sorry, I gotta turn it on. There we go. You need a waiver for through lots. No variances for signs. You need a waiver under tree mitigation for removing trees outside of the critical footprint area. And you need a variance for removing and not replacing a certain amount of trees. And you need a waiver for the stream corridor averaging, and I believe that's it.
The stream corridor averaging, and I thought to have our detention basin and perhaps our
Okay, yeah,
storm stores in the, I thought we needed a waiver for
correct.
the averaging, but also for,
Certain improvements within the stream
yes, it
corridor.
was, I thought the
correct.
sanitary or storm stores and detention or retention basins
Right,
to be,
okay. That was it. That was all of them.
That was it. And
Okay.
those are waivers.
Right. Okay, thank you.
All right, so at this time, I'm going to take a short recess. We need about 10 minutes, Mike? Okay. So it's just about, looks like 20 after, so we'll reconvene at 9:30.
Welcome to the Assessor's Office. I'm Deborah Blaney, the Hillsborough Assessor. In this department, we are responsible for valuing all the properties within Hillsborough Township. We implement an annual reassessment program that is approved by the State Division of Taxation. All properties are inspected once every 5 years, but the property values can change every year based on market trends. The Deputy Assessor will give more specifics on what is involved in a reassessment inspection, and you can also refer to our webpage and check out our FAQ and reference to the program. There is also a link to the current tax list where you can look up the value of all properties within Hillsborough. Another function of our office is to distribute and accept applications for deductions such as qualifying veterans, seniors, disabled veterans, and several other deductions. Please visit our webpage to see if you qualify for any deductions. Lastly, I would like to mention that the Assessor's Department is not associated with tax payments and tax bills. If you need assistance with tax payments, we will refer you to the Collector's Office. For more information, go to hillsborough-nj.org or click on the links below. Now the Deputy Assessor will discuss what is involved with a reassessment inspection of your property.
Hi, I'm Betsy Hollenbach. I'm the Deputy Assessor in Hillsborough Township. Hillsborough, like most of Somerset County, runs an annual reassessment program, which means that once every 5 years, an inspector will come to your property to inspect the interior and exterior. Prior to them coming to the property, you will receive a letter from our office stating that the inspector will be there in the following weeks. The letter will also state that if you prefer to call our office and set up a particular appointment, you may certainly do so. When the inspection is performed, the inspector will walk through the property with you and confirm that the information we have is accurate. Once the inspection interior is done, they will perform the outside by taking measurements of the exterior of the property and any exterior amenities. They will also take a picture of the exterior of the home. The inspection will take approximately 10 to 15 minutes, depending on the size of the property. If you're not home or it is not a good time when the inspector arrives, they will leave a note and you can contact our office to make an appointment at an exact time. If an interior inspection is not performed, the property will be estimated following the state guidelines, and it may not reflect the true attributes of your property, which affects the assessed value. As the assessor mentioned, please visit our website for more details and information regarding frequently asked questions. Go to hillsborough-nj.org or click on the links below.
Hello, my name is Shelley Capel, and I'm the Office Administrator of the Engineering Department. I'd like to take a few minutes to introduce you to the Hillsborough Engineering permit applications that are located on the Hillsborough Township website under Engineering. First is the Engineering General Permit application. This is for new structures such as garages and pole barns, first floor additions, driveway expansions, and in-ground pools. The instructions and fees are listed on the application along with the grading example which is needed with the application. Second is the Road and Public Space Opening Permit application. This is needed if you're expanding your driveway at the entrance by the roadway and any work that is done in the area from the curb and measuring back 10 feet, which is called the right-of-way. The last application I would like to discuss is the Soil Import application. If you're regrading your property, you'll need to submit a grading sketch. And if you plan on importing soil from outside of Hillsborough, you're required to submit lab results indicating that the soil is not contaminated. This and all of our permits are for your protection. If you would like to discuss any of these permits or have any other inquiries, please feel free to contact the Hillsborough Township Engineering Department anytime at hillsborough-nj.org or click on the links below.
Hi, my name is Susanna Karras and I'm the Director of Sustainability at Hillsborough Township. The Sustainability Department creates initiatives to engage and educate the public on maintaining a healthy planet environmentally, socially, and economically for future generations to thrive in.
My name is Sam, and I'm the Office Administrator for the Hillsborough Sustainability Office. Our office also handles the Township's yearly certification process through Sustainable Jersey, where we have been certified for our sustainability actions and initiatives since 2009. Hillsborough Township has been certified silver over 6 years straight. You can go to our website, sustainablehillsborough.com, for more information. Our office is open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m.
Welcome to the Assessor's Office. I'm Deborah Blaney, the Hillsborough Assessor. In this department, we are responsible for valuing all the properties within Hillsborough Township. We implement an annual reassessment program that is approved by the State Division of Taxation. All properties are inspected once every 5 years, but the property values can change every year based on market trends. The Deputy Assessor will give more specifics on what is involved in a reassessment inspection, and you can also refer to our webpage and check out our FAQ and reference to the program. There is also a link to the current tax list where you can look up the value of all properties within Hillsborough. Another function of our office is to distribute and accept applications for deductions such as qualifying veterans, seniors, disabled veterans, and several other deductions. Please visit our webpage to see if you qualify for any deductions. Lastly, I would like to mention that the Assessor's Department is not associated with tax payments and tax bills. If you need assistance with tax payments, we will refer you to the Collector's Office. For more information, go to hillsborough-nj.org or click on the links below. Now the Deputy Assessor will discuss what is involved with a reassessment inspection of your property.
Hi, I'm Betsy Hollenbach. I'm the Deputy Assessor in Hillsborough Township. Hillsborough, like most of Somerset County, runs an annual reassessment program, which means that once every 5 years, an inspector will come to your property to inspect the interior and exterior. Prior to them coming to the property, you will receive a letter from our office stating that the inspector will be there in the following weeks. The letter will also state that if you prefer to call our office and set up a particular appointment, you may certainly do so. When the inspection is performed, the inspector will walk through the property with you and confirm that the information we have is accurate. Once the inspection interior is done, they will perform the outside by taking measurements of the exterior of the property and any exterior amenities. They will also take a picture of the exterior of the home. The inspection will take approximately 10 to 15 minutes, depending on the size of the property. If you're not home or it is not a good time when the inspector arrives, they will leave a note and you can contact our office to make an appointment at an exact time. If an interior inspection is not performed, the property will be estimated following the state guidelines, and it may not reflect the true attributes of your property, which affects the assessed value. As the assessor mentioned, please visit our website for more details and information regarding frequently asked questions. Go to hillsborough-nj.org or click on the links below.
Welcome to the Assessor's Office. I'm Deborah Blaney, the Hillsborough Assessor. In this department, we are responsible for valuing all the properties within Hillsborough Township. We implement an annual reassessment program that is approved by the State Division of Taxation. All properties are inspected once every 5 years, but the property values can change every year based on market trends. The Deputy Assessor will give more specifics on what is involved in a reassessment inspection, and you can also refer to our webpage and check out our FAQ and reference to the program. There is also a link to the current tax list where you can look up the value of all properties within Hillsborough. Another function of our office is to distribute and accept applications for deductions such as qualifying veterans, seniors, disabled veterans, and several other deductions. Please visit our webpage to see if you qualify for any deductions. Lastly, I would like to mention that the Assessor's Department is not associated with tax payments and tax bills. If you need assistance with tax payments, we will refer you to the Collector's Office. For more information, go to hillsborough-nj.org or click on the links below. Now the Deputy Assessor will discuss what is involved with the reassessment inspection of your property.
Hi, I'm Betsy Hollenbach. I'm the Deputy Assessor in Hillsborough Township. Hillsborough, like most of Somerset County, runs an annual reassessment program, which means that once every 5 years, an inspector will come to your property to inspect the interior and exterior. Prior to them coming to the property, you will receive a letter from our
He's the only one that matters.
He's the only one, when he gives me, there we go, we're on. Okay, we're back in session.
Wait, I need to get my glasses.
So, Mr. Chairman, before the break, there was a comment, I don't remember frankly who made it, that this is the single-family development, it's not the inclusionary site. I think that's an unfair statement, and I wanted to read to you from the settlement agreement, which page specifically says to the contrary. So it's page 10, page 10, paragraph F. The township recognizes the disagreement and, as applicable, M&M's designation as redeveloper, all contemplate the development of an inclusionary development, which includes both the M&M parcel and the Sherman parcel phase 2, within the meaning of the Mount Laurel Doctrine. And M&M shall be entitled to all benefits, protections, and obligations afforded to developers of inclusionary developments. So it's not fair to say that we should be treated differently because we are the single-family side of the equation. When the phasing obligation and the settlement agreement certainly requires those to both be. So we're entitled under the agreement and as a matter of law, in my view, to whatever benefits or obligations are otherwise attributable to an inclusionary development. And with that, I think we're finished.
Okay. I'm just gonna.
Chairman, just one return to the tree mitigation just for a moment. So if I have the numbers right, you're going to you got the number down to 3577 of replacement trees. Would you consider replacing half of those
I would have to ask.
instead of the 500?
No. I asked that same question.
Microphone.
And it's not a one-to-one, Dave, and I would ask perhaps someone else on the board or consultants, it's not a one-to-one. You take one tree, put one back.
Oh, I'm well aware of
It's
that.
based, okay, but I'm not sure that the board or the
Board's
public
well aware of
is.
it too.
Okay, but you leave a 24-inch tree, it's not the same as leaving a 2-inch tree. So, it's not fair to say one-to-one, like do half. I thought that between the 680 and the 500, so that's another 1,100 trees being planted on the site is not an insignificant. The tree replacement fee, if we were to go that route, is over $1 million. That is a cost-generating issue for us.
That's
on
why
this
nobody
property.
is suggesting it.
I'm sorry?
That's why nobody is suggesting you pay $1 million for tree
Well, but
replacement.
the trees have a cost too. And if you don't get a waiver, at least in part, from the ordinance, you're talking about an in-kind spending of at least the same amount. So, our ownership said, I'll do an extra 500 trees, which is a big number. Now, look, if you were to come back to me and say something other than half, I would try to reach, owners and try to make a deal with you, because obviously that's the best approach for everybody. But I've already asked about half and he said no.
I think 1,000 trees would be reasonable.
How much?
I think 1,000 trees would be reasonable.
If the chair will allow me at some point to go, or maybe I can ask Mr. Allenbeck to make a call to ownership and see whether or not he would do 1,000. But before I do that, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if we get 1,000, is the board going to be satisfied with that? Because I don't want to come back with 1,000 and have somebody on the other side say, I want 1,500.
With 1,000 trees?
Maybe a straw vote, perhaps?
1,000 plus the shade trees, correct?
I understood that to be,
Correct.
I understood
That's in
that to be
addition to the
the
shade
request,
trees,
yes.
correct.
I say yes, but, I have a little knowledge in this to give the board an idea what that costs. The average tree price that we estimate a tree is roughly $325 per tree on that size. So it's at 1,000 trees. You can do the math of what the extra cost would be, which is, I don't think, exorbitant. But I would say.
Look, I still think it's cost generating, but it's not my
Well,
money.
it's-
And I personally think that's a fair approach. I don't know what ownership will say, but I hope they say yes.
And from what I gather, Mr. Wolfson, Mr. Allenbeck, the board is not saying that they want more, so call Mr. Morris and see if he'd like to chip in another 500.
Trees.
Please.
Mr. Chair, what I have typically seen is whatever the replacement ratio is. I mean, it sounds like, we're getting very close to a ratio from the numbers that have been generated. For every 2 trees, 1 will be replaced. That's where I'm seeing it. I want to remind the board, and the applicant knows this as well, that with any type of restrictions that come from DEP or from our own stream corridor averaging, if there are any trees within that realm that could be saved, that could constitute some savings as well. We don't know that, and we're not going to know that. I would, just remind the board from proportionality when I'm hearing maybe 2 to 1 may be a good for every 2 trees removed, only 1 be replaced. That will get you with the 1,000 trees plus the replacement of 658 trees. That's pretty close. 680, thank you, Mr. Wolf. So that, I think probably a 2 to 1 may be something to put into a condition if the applicant were to agree to that.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Maskey?
Say, anything else?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Board members.
So, does the sewer service area issue, does that affect how you view the project in terms of the benefit or the impact? And if that doesn't ultimately get approved, how does that affect your view of the overall positives of the contract? Does that affect it in any way?
If we lose the 10 lots, I use my phone.
Yes.
All right, well, okay. Before she answers, and I'm not telling, she should answer the question if she can. If the DEP doesn't extend the sewer service area, that doesn't mean we lose 10 lots. It means we have to either perk them or organize them in a way that allows them to be perked. So we could come back for those 10 lots with septic. So with that as a base of explanation, if you can answer the deputy mayor's question.
So I think your question, Deputy Mayor.
Can you just speak into the mic?
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
So
thanks.
I believe your question is, does the fact that there's a sewer service issue impacting 10 of the lots change my opinion on whether this is an appropriate site for affordable housing? Absolutely not. I think it's a very small percentage, and I think it's something that there are design options that we can work around. So I think that this certainly, when you do your site suitability test, your planner has to go through something that's called the ABLES. It has to be available, suitable, developable, and approvable. And I think that they will ultimately be approvable in some fashion.
Mr. Chairman, I've been informed in response to Ms. Smith's proposal, the ownership has indicated his consent and willing to put, in addition to the 680 shade trees that are part of the plan, an additional 1,000 trees on the site.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Good, thank you.
I should have asked for more.
Thank you. I don't know where we were going without you.
1,500. Always ask for more.
I feel embarrassed about it.
Any other comments, questions from the board members? Okay. So
I just want a clarification. How did you conclude that the stream issue, the stream recharge area, is necessary to implement the affordable housing plan? How do you draw the line between that and, let's call it the 88?
If I understand your.
Well, I asked her because that's what her testimony was.
I don't understand your question. How do I draw the line between that and the 88?
No, how did you conclude that it's necessary to do this, to implement the affordable housing plan?
Because this was part of your, so there's a settlement agreement that contemplated this site being developed. It was really a overall plan of 380 units, 380 single-family homes as part of your housing plan. So that's how I conclude, is that this site was to be developed with single, which is not uncommon.
Mhm.
It's not unusual to have the affordable housing generated and constructed elsewhere. That's not, it has to be done in the municipality, but that's done all the time. So how I come to the conclusion that this is implementing your affordable housing plan is because it's governed by a settlement agreement that has this actual subdivision layout appended to it.
And what's the rest of that affordable housing agreement then?
Well, now.
I want her to answer.
Well, if you're asking her a legal question, because you're asking her about the settlement agreement, I'll answer. If you want to ask her about her testimony, she's more than capable of answering.
Well, that was her testimony, that
we're implementing a settlement agreement.
right, she mentioned the 88 houses as well, or the 88 units, so,
There are 88 units on the Sherman tract.
and we haven't seen that yet, right?
No, they're to be phased in accordance with the agreement and call regulations. They don't get started until after the subdivision gets started. And there's a phasing plan, that's the law, and the law was incorporated into the agreement.
Is
by
that
your
in,
attorneys.
the phasing plan is in the agreement?
Yes, and it's the
Okay.
law.
Right.
We wouldn't have been able to
There are
change that anyway.
related items to it, but.
No, I understand.
Second-
I understand the proportionality and all that.
Of this specific discussion, the phasing plan is in the agreement.
All right, right. Okay, I mean, again, I just, when we were talking about those specific houses, and you went to the affordable housing plan, it just raised a, you know.
Yes, because they're linked.
Fair question, but they're linked,
Right, they're linked. You can't,
based on what I read to you.
Oh, I know they're linked. I know,
There are
we all know that the
governors-
three parts are linked.
there are governors in the settlement agreement such that this developer could not build out this entire development without building the affordable housing on the Sherman tract.
And what was your understanding of the impervious coverage? You made a statement very early on that it complies fully with impervious coverage, but I know that there's a certain allowances for the tract versus, I don't know if I'm using the right terminology or not, but the impervious coverage of each site versus the overall site.
Are you asking for the impervious cover of a lot or of the overall tract?
Well, what's our understanding of that comment? What's your understanding of it meeting
You can answer.
the impervious coverage?
My understanding is that in the R8A zoning district, there are requirements for impervious coverage. And if you look on page 2 of Mr. Maskey's June 2nd, 22 letter, there's actually a table there, which he took from our plans. And there's a statement that the R8A bulk standards are outlined below. There are no bulk variances associated with this application. And when you run down those bulk standards, one of them is maximum impervious surface on lots, and we comply with that. We're showing a proposed footprint of a max of 3,200 square feet. So we would comply with the coverage requirements that you have in your ordinance for the R8A.
Per lot, was that 40, you said 3,200 square feet, was it
3,200 square
40%?
feet, it's 35% is the coverage.
35%,
No,
30.
40%, sorry.
40.
40.
Yeah, 40%.
Okay,
So we would comply with that.
all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions, comments? Otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to the public. If anyone would like to cross-examine or question this witness on her testimony, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Greg Colmer, 144 Taylor. I'm good with numbers, but there were a lot of numbers in the beginning, so maybe just some clarity on the trees. And it sounds like we got some movement on it. That's really wonderful. So I heard words like replacement, and I may need some just terminology or definition for there was 3,577 replacement. What does
Sure.
replacement mean?
Okay, so we are removing, so I don't know that we ever got an answer on how many we're removing. Previously, we were asking for relief to remove 1,955. Now, we reduced that since the last application because we reduced the percentage of trees that we were removing. So,
Ms. Cafone, sorry.
I'm sorry. So the replacement is in your ordinance in Hillsborough, you have a requirement that for every tree you remove, you have to replace it in kind with a tree. So that's how we got to the 3,577 number. That number is predicated on the number that we're removing. The one that we were originally proposing a mitigation of 500, which we asked ownership then to increase to 1,000 based on Ms. Smith's request. So I hope that gives you some clarity.
No. So you were removing 3,577
We're definitely
trees.
not removing 3,577 trees.
We're moving less than 1,955.
Right.
What's the 3,577?
That's the replacement, per your ordinance.
Which is a 1-to-1.
No, that's,
really
see,
not-
that's the problem.
It's not.
It's not
That's what I need
one-to-one.
clarity on.
Right.
It's a great question, and perhaps Mr. Hay can explain it, but it's based upon the size of the trees. So a bigger tree has to be replaced by more little trees.
Okay, there are 1,900 trees. They are big trees. And if you count for the size of those, that equates to 3,577?
Based upon the ordinance, correct?
Yeah, it's based on.
That's before the reduction to under 20%.
Sure, you okay?
I'm asking you. I don't.
It's
I
based,
don't-
it's based on the diameter of the tree. It's based on what the size of the tree is. So even though physically they're replacing 1,900 trees, if you look at our definition, when you look at the diameter, technically they're supposed to go ahead and replace 3,577 trees. So it's based on diameter, and it's very common within a lot of land development ordinances with municipalities in the state to have that type of equation.
Okay, thank you. Sort of. More research on my part. Appreciate it. How many is the, I heard numbers such as 680 and then 500 and then 500 more. So your proposal is to plant now 1,680 trees.
Correct.
Yes, we're going
That's
to plant
correct.
16, right.
That's correct.
Yes.
I'm listening.
Your
Isn't
math
that
is
great?
pretty good.
How many trees do you think are going to be counted that are like not counted for development areas, like whatever? In you say we're not counting these because we're going to plant some more and they're going to be in the development. How many of those are not
The
in
shade trees, which are a requirement of the landscaping plan under the ordinance definition, don't count towards
there? That's
replacement.
680.
That's the 680.
Okay, thank you.
So we have to do the 680, plus we were agreed after Ms. Smith requested and our ownership said yes, to an additional 1,000 on top of the 680.
Okay, thank you. For the stream corridor, these sites that are up here in green, I heard, and I'm not quoting because I didn't get the exact quote, but I heard that site development cannot be possible to not include them. I have a problem with that statement to say, why couldn't it? Why couldn't you?
Well, that's a legal question, and the question is related to the settlement agreement between the town and us, which requires 380 units in order to generate 88 affordable housing units. If you knock down the number of units, you're one, violating the concept plan and the agreement as to the number, and two, the ultimate result would be to reduce the number of affordable units, which nobody wants to do,
Why do you have to put them there?
because it's the only place to put them.
There's simply no
ordinance-
other engineering, no way
Correct.
you could possibly
Correct.
do it.
Correct.
And then, so on
Let me
top of
explain
that,
to you.
there's,
Because the town sets the lot sizes. So we have the maximum and minimum lot sizes that are there. So based upon what they said the lot size can be and the number that have to go, that's the only layout that fits. There's no other, if you take them off, you don't have 380 anymore. you have 365.
How many engineers did you have go through this? What's the terminology for this, whatever?
I think we're veering out of.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just
testimony,
wondering,
yeah.
like, listen, how many of us?
We're questioning the testimony of a planner, not an engineer.
Thank you, I appreciate that. But I did also hear a statement, just that was, part of the testimony was there was 10 sewer lots where, okay, if we didn't get, and this is part of Mr. Hayes' sort of comment was, we'll organize it in a way that we will perk them, and I heard a terminology which I didn't understand.
That's what I said. If you heard the testimony about the DEP approval,
Well, it wasn't, there was Mr. Wolfson's statement as to what might occur depending on certain conditions under his engineering degree.
I'm not sure that was called for. But the fact of the matter is, the fact statement, which nobody, the boards and professionals disagrees with, is that there's a 208 sewer plan. The plan does not extend to cover those 10 lots.
I don't need
And
to
there's
get
an-
into the 10 lots in there,
Okay.
but you said you may be able to do something with those 10
You
lots
don't need
somewhere
to
else.
be in a sewer plan to build a house.
Okay, you would still build. I was wondering because you would sound like you would alter the plan.
No.
For the additional 10 and be like, well, why can't you alter those? That was my question, essentially. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good question, actually.
Okay. Anyone else from the public? And I'm just going to remind everybody that it's 10 to 10 and we will end at 10:30. And I think the applicant I know has been here and,
We are finished. I'm sorry. I didn't.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm just, so I'm just going to ask everyone to, that comes up to be to the point on questions and.
Be ready to come up.
Right. So if anyone else from the public that's going to come up, I would suggest please start to line up. If I don't see anybody when when Susan goes back down, we're going to move on.
Okay, Susan Gulliford on Club Road. Boy, I have a couple of questions. On those, okay, I'm not sure where to start. Sidewalks on Hamilton and Falcon. I'll start there. Premier had agreed, that's Gateway, had agreed to add the Falcon Road sidewalks and fix Falcon when they're done with their construction. Meanwhile, we've got the ditches on the side, no sidewalks, a lot of vehicles ending up in those ditches, including school buses. Are
Giving
you also?
testimony now?
That was testimony.
Okay, sure.
Are you also going to be adding, okay, you've got some through lots on Hamilton and Falcon, which you had discussed. When the sidewalks and the ditches are repaired, that will take property off the back end, what would be the rear of the through lots, correct?
No.
Okay, how would that work that you would put in the sidewalks and repair the ditches and not use the property off the through lots?
We made a right-of-way dedication along Falcon.
Oh, okay, so the right-of-way dedication starts at the back end of the through lots?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I went through the paperwork, and usually in the paperwork, I see the size of the homes that are proposed, like, from 2,000 to 2,500 square feet. I may have missed it. Do you know what the proposed square footage of all these homes are?
We showed a conforming building envelope on our site, on our plans, so we did not show a house type, but we did show a compliant building footprint.
Okay, so look at each lot, look at the envelope, and that should give me the figure of what would be allowed or proposed.
Go on the lot.
Okay, and I can't remember if I saw, are these all 4 and 5 bedroom?
We did not provide architectural plans.
Okay, without knowing the number of bedrooms, how did you come up with your were you the community impact statement person?
I did not prepare the
Oh.
community impact statement.
Okay, I was going to ask how you came up with the figures for your community impact statement without knowing how many bedrooms you're going to have, but I guess that's somebody else. Okay, so the sidewalks are going to be put in eventually on Falcon and Hamilton. Okay, got it. And the tree thing, I wish you had a big chart. Thank you.
Yep.
Maria Janusik, 720 East Frank Avenue, Manville, New Jersey. I believe Ms. Cafone made the statement, this is an appropriate site for affordable housing. You made that statement?
I did.
Yes. Okay. How many affordable homes will there be on this site?
Zero.
Zero. So how is this appropriate if you don't have a single affordable housing unit? How is this appropriate?
It's not unusual for sites to be included in a municipality's housing plan. In order for them to be part of the housing plan, they have to be approvable, suitable, developable, and available. As part of that process, they can be developed and then generate affordable housing elsewhere. So that is how this site is part of the township's housing plan. And again, let me be clear, I did not author the township's housing plan. This site was put in by the municipality in a plan that was authored by the township's housing professionals.
Okay. Have you seen your plan?
I have.
You have. I think the plan includes something about not building in areas where there's wetlands. I think that was one of the conditions in the township's housing plan. So how is this appropriate then for affordable housing when that was one of the things that it wouldn't be building?
We're not building in the wetlands.
You're not building on wetlands, but you need
Correct.
You need permits for wetlands, for flood hazard area.
To delineate
for all of
them
this stuff.
so that we don't build in them.
You're gonna cut down trees, it's gonna increase flooding, but
All right, Ms. Janusik, you'll be able to make those comments at the end of the
Okay,
testimony.
well, because to make this statement, it's appropriate
Okay.
site when there's not one single, so, why wasn't the settlement agreement provided to the
That's not a
public?
question for the planner. Please pose a question to the planner.
So what aspects of the settlement agreement are you concerned with?
Object to that question.
Why?
Because the settlement agreement is what it is, and no one can object to it or like it or dislike it. It is what it is. It
I'm not asking her to
speaks for
object,
itself.
not object, I'm just saying.
I object, and I'm
what part
going
of this
to
is-
ask the chair to direct the question to move on.
Please move on.
The settlement agreement states that.
That's not a
the
question for the
property
planner.
is
Ms.
lot
Janusik.
182, lot
Ms.
1101,
Janusik.
And lot 9.
Ms. Janusik,
Is Ms.
you
Capone
may
looking
state
at
your
the
opinions
settlement
on the
agreement
merits.
with
Ms.
the lots
Janusik,
that are
can you just stop for a moment?
Okay.
You're up here to ask questions, cross-examine the planner. If you want to make statements for or against the approval of this application, you will have an opportunity later tonight. Right now, your focus is on the planner's testimony.
All right, so Ms. Capone, you spoke about the property that you looked at, which is block 182, lot 11.01, which is the subject of today's agenda, but there's also a lot 9 in the settlement agreement. What is the situation with lot 9?
The settlement agreement speaks for itself, Mr. Chairman, please.
I mean, we've been talking about the settlement agreement and what's being done on the property. That's a part of this agreement. So where is lot 9? What's happening with lot 9?
Ms. Khan, are you able to answer that question? You don't have, just, if you're not able to answer that question, you can say that. Okay. So it's not in a purview of her testimony.
Do you have anything to do with impervious coverage?
She's not an engineer. I can answer that.
All right. You said that some of the things that are required is a waiver for 2 lots?
What I said was a waiver for through lots, not through lots.
Through lots, okay. So what is that, actually, what does that mean, through lots?
So through lots are lots that have frontage on 2 streets.
Microphone, sorry.
I'm sorry. Through lots are lots that have frontage on 2 streets. So the example, this application has 5 lots that front on Falcon, and then those lots also front on the interior road. We also have 5 lots that front on Hamilton, and then they also front on one of our interior roads. So if you think about it, there are access off the interior road, and then their backyards back up to Falcon and Hamilton.
Backs up to Falcon Road.
So if you're on Hamilton and you see the homes that are on North Point View, their backyards are along Hamilton. Those are through lots because they touch 2 roads. The backyard's along Hamilton, and then their front yard is along North Point View. So that would be the example I can give you of homes that exist today in Hillsborough that are through lots.
They're accessed off of North Point View. That's where their driveways are, and their front doors and their addresses are to North Point View. But their backyards, where there's a very large board-on-board fence there, the backyards touch Hamilton. That's a through lot.
So there's going to be how many of those?
We have 10 of them.
10. So you have to get you need a waiver for those?
Not necessarily to create them. The ordinance in Hillsborough has 3 requirements to create through lots. So they're allowed, they're permissible, but you have to meet 3 criteria. We meet them for the lots on Hamilton. We indicated that we could comply and provide the 25-foot buffer in the back. Along Falcon, because we had to give a 33-foot right-of-way dedication there, we can't really do the 25-foot buffer along as required in the backyard. So we said we could do 10, and we're asking for a waiver to do 25 feet because we can't provide a full 25 feet there along Falcon because of the right-of-way dedication.
Okay. And I'm sorry again, how many of those homes that need the waiver?
5 on Falcon.
Okay. You need a waiver for stream corridor averaging. All right, that was, I think, mentioned before. How does that apply here to the homes?
It doesn't apply to the through lots. It only applies to the homes that are the subject shown up on the board, highlighted in green up on the screen. It applies to those lots. So a very small percentage of the lots in the overall subdivision that applies to.
So they are in the stream corridor?
Correct.
Okay, we talked about, we also need a waiver for sanitary. You need a waiver for sanitary sewer? Anything to do with the sanitary sewer?
No.
No? Okay. So there's a need for an averaging plan. Is that has to do with the stream corridor, the averaging plan?
Which is permissible in the ordinance. You're allowed to do an averaging plan.
But the waiver for the averaging plan, that is referring to the stream corridor, because I just wrote this down.
Yes.
Buffer averaging needs to be reviewed. What that was mentioned, what does that mean?
Mr. Hay has reviewed all of the engineering plans.
Mr. Hayes.
Hay, your board engineer has reviewed our
Reviewed it
engineering
already?
plans. Yes.
And everything is good? All right, now what is this 15 lots are involved in transition? What is that referring to?
I don't understand your question.
No. Okay. How many lots are going to be in the stream corridor buffer?
It's about 15.
15 in the stream corridor.
Approximately.
You were referring to those through lots, and you mentioned something about a situation being complicated. What was that referring to?
I'm not sure what you mean by complicated.
No, because you had mentioned that. I don't know why. Did you have involvement with the settlement agreement?
I did not.
All right. Excuse me?
If you have a question ready, can you please make it, otherwise come
There's
back?
quite a bit of testimony, and so, I'm not an expert at this. It doesn't come off the top of my head. So this property is in the R8 zone?
R8A.
R8A, and this was newly created for this property,
Yes.
according to the settlement agreement. That was part of the settlement agreement, to create a zone for this property.
Yes.
You say that this is a completely conforming application?
With respect to the bulk criteria and the use for the R8A.
In respect to the bulk criteria and what?
The use. So
The use.
again, Mr. Maskey states that in his review letter as well, that we conform to the bulk criteria for the R8A zone.
Okay, so there is a letter from Mr. Maskey that was discussed, because that wasn't you discussed certain things and we don't know what specifically you're talking about. This was a letter from Mr. Maskey to you?
No, it was not. It was a letter from Mr. Maskey to the board. It was dated June 2nd of 2022, and it is in fact available online.
Okay, all right. Just that I don't, there's a lot of stuff that's available and we don't know which ones you're referring to. Okay, and your area of expertise is in affordable housing
Yeah, part of it, yes, as well as the planning.
and planning? Okay, all right. And once again, there's no affordable housing on this. Now, what about the next phase of this application? Is there affordable housing on that phase?
This is the only application.
Testimony.
This application's one phase,
One phase.
what we
okay.
have going on.
Was it ever explained why just one phase? Why, how is this normal for an application to be?
Not the
split
right
up?
time to ask that
That
question.
has to do with the affordable housing settlement. There's going to be multiple
With
applications.
the settlement, okay.
Right.
And yet the settlement is not considered part of the application. This is what was told
Okay.
at a prior meeting. The settlement agreement is something separate, yet this is very germane to this application. Thank you.
Thank you.
My question just audience.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
We're not picking you up. if you
I
fall.
know.
Okay.
Meryl Bisberg, 4 Hickory Hill Road. We talked about the tree waiver variance, and it was related to the substantial hardship of having to provide so many more replacement trees, and I know that was partially modified during the evening. But this is one of the issues of having the affordable housing, which, as Mr. Bernstein said, is not really in this application, not with not with the houses that are going to be constructed here. So can we get a guarantee, for instance, that since it's because of.
Is it
a question
sorry,
for the
quick
app-
question
Yeah,
for the
I'd
planner?
like to know that there will be at least a similar tree replacement on Sherman Tract. I think that's a fair question.
No.
Because
it's-
this is-
We're not on.
We're not unsure. There's no application called Sherman Track in front of us. Ms. Bisberg, you've been to enough planning board hearings, to stay focused on this application.
I just want to also clarify or ask a question. It was stated before, I think that this plan was conforming with the settlement agreement in 2019. But at the time, the standard for impermeable surface was 35%. And there was a ordinance that was passed in September or October of 2021, shortly after Ida, to increase the impermeable surface to 40%. So it was not in conformance. And I think the fact that we had to increase the impermeable surface to 40% is.
Do you have a
related
question to the
trees.
planner, please? That you're going down the path of engineering.
All right, we have an affordable housing ordinance now. I know you're going to tell me that I can't ask about affordable housing now, but this whole
You're just asking her
application
about
is
her
enabled.
testimony. It's not complicated. What she talked about, you can ask her question. That's it right now.
All right, well, do you agree that it was 35% at the time that the settlement was agreed to and the original plan was generated?
No. I don't. We conform with the ordinance that's in place now
Yes.
governing this property.
It's in place now, but it was modified at the end of 2021.
Well, zone is not.
The zone was
The
modified.
zone didn't exist.
No, the zone did exist. And the zone was then modified. The zone existed shortly after that settlement agreement. And we had to go back and modify it. So
We conform to the zoning that's in place now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so no additional questions. Board members, you had your shot, Susan. We don't have a lot of time. Yeah. Okay.
That concludes our affirmative case, Mr. Chairman. We're finished. We did bring Mr. Larkin because Mr. Bernstein indicated that there was some interest in our doing so, and we wanted to be as cooperative as possible.
Right.
So he's here, and if you have questions you want to ask him that he can answer, feel free.
You bring him up, we'll swear him in.
All right.
You swearing testimony you give tonight is going to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Sit there.
Yes.
And can you state and spell your name, please?
John Larkins, Larkins.
Mr. Larkins, can you indicate to the board your credentials and your current employment?
Yes, I am an environmental consultant with 40 years of experience, with approximately 10 of those last years as a licensed site remediation professional, and I work for RTP Environmental Associates located in Greenbrook, New Jersey.
And that is an LSRP for those who like to throw around the acronyms.
It is a licensed site remediation professional, yes.
Also known as an LSRP.
Correct.
Board members have questions, Mr. Larkins, related to some of the paperwork that's going on around Mr. Julian?
Nope, I do not have any questions at this time.
Okay.
So just to be clear, but so you have given RAO for this site back in 2014, I believe?
No, I have not.
Oh, you're not the one who did it, I'm sorry.
No, I'm not.
Okay, you're just an LSRP.
Correct.
In general. Okay. So in your opinion, if there was any issues that would need to be addressed, it would be brought up by the DEP in further
That is correct.
based on what was issued previously?
Correct.
Mr. Larkins, are you familiar that there is a brick building on the existing property?
Yes, I am aware of that.
Is that part of this application?
That I don't know.
Mr. Wolfson?
There's one standing structure left on the property, correct? It's coming down.
And any remediation that has to come with it will also occur accordingly, correct? Because there's an indication it's got internal issues based on other reports, including the LSRP back in 2014. Any other questions, Mr. Larkins? I appreciate Mr. Wolfson bringing him.
I have a question or a clarification. So part of the discussion we've had earlier, and I understand you weren't the one who was involved in the 2014 study. There were comments made at the time, and that study was based on basically a subdivision by the Glengarry Corporation to realign the lot lines. There was no construction involved. The comments that were made at the time by the board engineer was that all the information, RAO, et cetera, that was submitted at that time was acceptable, with the caveat that there was no new construction or no new uses proposed at that time. And in the event that some construction or development of the property were proposed at a later date, that perhaps the initial studies needed to be taken a look at to make sure they could accommodate, in this case, single-family residential. So I'd just like you to opine on that. Do you think the 2014 study covered everything it needed to? Does our former engineer's comment that there was nothing proposed on the site at the time, it was just a subdivision, and that there should be additional studies or clarification when the proposed development comes before the board? Can you opine on that? Where do you see all that lining up here?
Okay, well, the former Glengarry site was a part of a program in the NJDEP called the Industrial Site Recovery Act, called ISRA. It is one of the most comprehensive programs to study an industrial site in the country, okay?
The LSRP of record for this site at the time Glengarry shut down their operations had done remediation to the point where he was able to issue an unrestricted response action outcome. That means this site can be used for anything. There are no restrictions, there is no deed notice, there's no soil contamination, there's no groundwater contamination. So I do not know where the previous engineer was coming from, but an unrestricted use RAO, for lack of a better term, is a golden ticket.
Mr. Chairman, I would agree with that, considering I have LSRPs that are under my supervision in New Jersey. The applicant's witness is correct. I wouldn't mind the board because I have had questions asked of me concerning the document that the witness is referring to with the scope of remediation, which was an ISRA application dated on November 24, 2014, that there were no conditions. It was unrestricted. There were notices, however, that did talk about buildings, building interiors, what have you, that were non-child care related. Those will be covered under any Uniform Construction Code Act that the building department, if this application were to be approved and to move forward, if the buildings were to be demolished, they would be required to present an asbestos and hazardous material mitigation plan to go ahead and demolish those buildings and dispose of that material properly. So I just want to put that on the record that, whatever was in those buildings, whatever is there now, structures that will come down, that's covered under what the purview of the building department. Not covered under my purview, not covered under the board's purview. UCC is very clear with that. The remedial action outcome that the witness referred to, it is unrestricted. There are no other restrictions. It covers everything, including, and if the witness could clarify this, Mr. Wolfson, residential use as well. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So in my estimation, this is what I had been asking for some time, was to make sure that it was unrestricted, because there had been a lot of questions from the public as to whether or not residential use would be restricted. It is an unrestricted RAO, and therefore this applicant is allowed to do whatever really they want to do within the purview of not just the law in New Jersey, but Uniform Construction Code, which goes back to the International Building Code as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Questions? Public. We go to the public. Okay. Real quick, the public gets one shot at this witness on anything that he has provided answers to, because obviously he did not provide any testimony per se.
Okay, so Merrill Bisberg, 4 Hickory Hill Road. We're back to the memo that I asked about at the beginning of the meeting, and Mr. Larkin's name is on this email string also. So I think what Mr. Maskey and Mr. Hay were referring to was this response action outcome dated 11/24/14. It says, let me just see who this is from. Again, this is the previous person, Toscos, LSRP, and it's to Krzyzanowski. As a licensed site remediation professional authorized pursuant to NJSA 5810 to conduct business in New Jersey, I hereby issue the response action outcome for the remediation of industrial establishment as defined according to NJAC 7:26B, specifically referenced above. I personally reviewed and accepted all of the reference remediation. Based upon the work, is my professional opinion this remediation has been completed in compliance with administrative requirements for the remediation of contaminated sites NJAC 726C. That is protective of public health, safety, and environment. Also, full payment has been made to this department for all fees and oversight costs. So just 2 points I want to bring up. Yes.
Mr. Martin didn't write that? He didn't respond to that, correct?
He did respond to it. No, he didn't write it. And it wasn't written to him, but the string, the
I
string
object
was.
to-
Speak to the mic, please, Mrs. Ginsburg, and answer the
Okay.
question.
The document has no page 2, and there definitely was a page 2 because this is page 3. And it's like this both in the email string and as it's posted on the site. So I'm just wondering why it's a full page that's missing. And also, if you check I'm not sure, so I'm asking. If you check NJAC 7:26B, isn't that specifically for industrial sites? So I understand why there'd be a question.
Are you asking him this?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a program that, when Glengarry decided to close operations, they needed to go through this rule, and that's what that is referencing. It's not referencing that the site can, only be an industrial property. It's received an unrestricted response action outcome.
Being from an industrial property, but also being used as an industrial property in the future.
No,
No?
no.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. Seeing no one else from, I'm going to ask everyone, please line up, because we are in the last 10 minutes of the evening.
Albert Albanus, 42 Stonewood Drive. This is quick.
Yeah.
I just don't understand.
Close to the mic, please.
Okay. So 186 houses are being built and 88 that's going to be low income.
Has nothing to do with this
Has nothing to
testimony.
do.
This is just on the LSRP testimony about the remedial action outcome. That's it.
Okay, then, all right, sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, did you open it to the public, or are we still on questions?
Or
No, it's on
just for this
questions to Mr.
testimony.
Larkins.
Yeah.
Maria Janusik, 720 East Freck Avenue. What is your name again, sir?
John Larkins,
John Larkins. And what is the name of your firm?
RTP Environmental.
In Greenbrook?
Yes.
Okay. So where are you getting your information from that you're giving us?
From the NJDEP, it's all public information.
From the NJDEP in regard to what?
In regards to the remediation of this site.
Of what, the Glengarry recycling?
Correct.
Glengarry, the entire site?
Entire site.
Okay, and from what year is this report, the remediation?
2014.
2014, and do you have, is that entire report available, or is it something you only reviewed?
Oh, that's available to everyone.
Okay, so what types of remediation were done on this site?
My understanding was some excavation work, some post-excavation sampling, and
I'm sorry, excavation sampling of what?
soil.
Soil, and what was found in the soil when it was excavated?
From my end, I can't recall, to be honest with you.
Okay, and so what else?
He wasn't there.
He didn't do the work.
He's just provided what the DEP.
I understand, but he was reading what was remediated, what was in the soil.
He was
So
reading
that's what
was.
we'd like to know.
He was reading
What is it?
what the report was from the LSRP.
Excuse me?
He was reviewing what the report was from the LSRP.
Well, then, can he give us some information as
I
to
don't
what
know.
types of contamination?
I don't
What kind
know.
of contamination there was, and what was remediated, how it
Okay.
was done?
I don't know.
Well, then, so what's the purpose of the
Okay,
testimony?
I'm going to step in
What is the
because,
purpose
no,
of this
you're
testimony?
trying to be combative.
I'm
he
not being
gave it- no.
combative. This gentleman is here.
Yes,
giving
and
us
he
a report,
provided us-
But he doesn't know.
No, he
doesn't know
provided
what
us-
was excavated,
Ms. Janusik,
what was in
Will
the
you let
land.
someone
No,
speak and
he didn't
answer
give a
your
good- he didn't give a
question?
good answer.
You don't like the
For the
answer, that's why
record,
it's-
he stated that the DEP, through the LSRP, has provided a completely clean bill of health on the property. That was his testimony.
And if you're interested in knowing what was there, as he stated, it's public record. You're more than welcome tomorrow to go request, and you can read it and
So what
and
was
answer
the
your own
purpose
question.
of this gentleman coming to say that? I could have came and said, hey, guys, read and what NJDEP.
You didn't
wrote.
read it, he read it.
Well,
And
then
he,
why can't he tell us what specific?
Mr. Chairman, okay, I'm not getting into
that were
debate.
Excavated, what was.
Do you have a
contaminated-
question?
What was
No,
contaminated?
do you
in the sewer?
have a
What was
question?
remediated?
He already
It served no-
answered that.
It served no purpose.
All right.
God, speaking of no purpose.
Okay. So where are we at this? point, do we
Well,
go?
we're
go
at
to the public?
10:23. I'm assuming that you're going to allow the public to comment on the overall application. I assume Mr. Wolfson wants to have his final words.
Right.
And then we're assuming where we are, we'll get to the next step.
Okay, so public for their final comments.
Public for comments on the application itself.
Okay. So this is where we've come to the end of the applicants, providing, their testimony, facts and whatnot. Now, the public is free to come up to make any comments. There's no longer questions, but any comments that you feel, on the merits of this application, whether it's, for approval, against approval, any comments. However, please refrain from potentially trying to provide testimony, as stating something that is a fact. This is your opinion.
Alberta Albanus, 42 Stillwood Drive. All right, my question, but I don't understand, why aren't they doing everything in one time? Why are they going to do 88 low-income houses on another application? We're going to have to go through all of this again instead of doing everything from the beginning. That's what I.
Unfortunately, that's what they're permitted to do. It's per the agreement,
Well,
settlement
no,
agreement.
no.
Well,
That's what they are choosing
choosing to,
to
right.
do.
But they have the ability, and I'm just going to kind of cut to the chase. If you really don't like the process of affordable housing, and I've said this probably a million times, we have our New Jersey legislators who can do something. The courts have told them to do something, and they haven't done anything. So, my suggestion is to reach out to our legislators and saying, this process is broken. The courts have told them it's broken, to go fix it, and they have not fixed it. And this is, I understand where you're coming from. And it's part of our frustrations too, as we have to go through this.
So you're saying that they don't, because it's the affordable housing part, they could just wait on that?
No.
They have obligations,
Yes.
ma'am, that they're going to have to acquire.
Right.
They are choosing, not the board, not the township. They are choosing to take this in multiple stages.
Mhm.
That's their desire, and they'll be dealt with in multiple stages.
Right. And unfortunately, and the law permits that.
No, we can't force them to do everything at one time.
Correct.
And quite honestly,
Go through all this again.
Correct.
quite
Right.
honestly, it's two separate sites also, so it'd be
Right.
two separate site plans.
Right.
So that's why they're not really the same.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Maria Janusik, 720 East Freck Avenue. First of all, when this application has been before this board at other times, we members of the public were told that the settlement agreement has nothing to do with the application. And that's false, because we've just been listening to a whole bunch of stuff pertaining to the settlement agreement. Second issue, I found out, or it's been discussed at the township committee meetings, that the attorney, Eric Bernstein, represented the township in the settlement agreement negotiations. Then he came here now as the planning board attorney, and he obligated this planning board through his negotiations on that settlement agreement. The settlement agreement shows an extra lot in regard to this application, which has not been addressed. I've asked about it, and I get shut down. This is an affordable housing application, not one affordable housing unit. Now, there's an agreement for the Sherman Tract. They're not the owners of the Sherman Tract. What is this all about? What kind of settlement agreement is that? What did Judge Thomas,
Miller. Judge Miller.
Tom Miller.
Thomas C. Miller, thank you, Attorney Bernstein. So this whole thing is extremely convoluted. How is this an affordable housing application? I was here when the township committee talked about the township's affordable housing plan. In there, it states that lands that have, properties that have wetlands shouldn't be touched. You're gonna cut down so many trees. The applicant's boss is doing a big favor by saying, oh yeah, I'll allow, we'll plant a few more trees. You're gonna destroy so many trees. This is a huge issue with flooding in Hillsborough. We recently had a catastrophic flood where people died. And now you're gonna cut down trees, you're gonna invade freshwater wetlands, flood hazard area, the Delaware and Raritan Canal Commission properties, because this is considered a suitable site for affordable housing, but there is no affordable housing. And as far as the Sherman Tract, that property is loaded with wetlands. It's right next to the Royce Brook. So this application is bad. It's bad for Hillsborough, and this should not be approved.
No worries. They stepped out, so I don't know what they're talking about, so.
Laura Felker, 12 Shady Brook Court.
A little closer, Mr.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thanks, Laura.
So my husband and I have just started coming to the planning board meetings. So I have sympathy for you all because it seems as though development in town is constrained by so many limitations and forces that there isn't much room for change. But I hope you understand that from the public's point of view, we don't all understand all these limitations and all the requirements. And so a little patience with the public is greatly appreciated. Good luck. I think it's a terrible development, but what can we do? We live close, it's gonna flood. What can we do? Good luck. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? Okay. Closing comments.
I'll waive our closing comments and ask the board to vote to approve the application with the conditions imposed by Mr. Hay, as memorialized, I think, by Mr. Bernstein and those of Mr. Maskey. I think that we demonstrated an attempt to really work closely with the board and go along with the things that the board has requested, like bringing Mr. Larkins here and compromising with Ms. Smith's request. The waivers that we've requested based on Ms. Cafone's testimony to minor and de minimis, exactly the kinds of things that the settlement agreement said are appropriate, as long as we don't change the density on an upward basis. And I want to thank you for going through, and I agree with the one statement that she says. You guys are great. I mean, to put up with what you put up with us and everybody else for as many months as we have, you guys should get medals. I sat on my own zoning board in North Brunswick, my town, and we didn't have to do anything like you guys have to do. So I really appreciate you coming out. Thank you for getting us to the end zone. We hope the vote will be positive, and we'll leave it in your good hands.
Thank you.
In addition, Mr. Chairman, to the conditions that the parties approved at the prior hearings, which are documented in the transcripts, I have a few other recommended conditions.
Okay, and I'm gonna run by you some of mine too, but.
Which
I'll let you
I'm
go.
not so sure gets Mr. Wolfson just yet into the end zone. The first condition is that the board approve only up to 188 residential units / lot on the construction of up to 188, subject to DEP approval as to the 188 lots. As testimony has been given, there are still outstanding permits which may impact the 188. We are clearly understanding that there are 10 units, 10 lots outside of the sewer service area. And therefore, if Mr. Wolfson's client wants to come back for that approval, he needs to come back at the appropriate time. That's part one. Part two, this is an affordable housing application, and we've heard the various comments regarding it. And what has been an underlying issue of this application is we still don't have a site plan for phase 2 of the Sherman Tract. So the next condition is no construction on the Glengarry site as to any residences without an approved plan by this board for affordable housing on phase 2 of the Sherman Tract.
Can we state the quantity? Because I think that's the crux of the matter.
Well, the quantity can get dealt with at the time the affordable housing application comes, because if there's no construction going on the site
Mhm.
relative to the site, the issue of the phase-in and the questions raised in as to how many units are going to have to be phased in before this has to be built. I think that's the appropriate time and place to deal with it.
Fair enough.
Third, applicant must return to the board prior to any site work being done on the property as the status of all sewer service expansion, TWA permits and/or stream corridor permits, and seek board approval as to any units either in excess of whatever the number is that ultimately is approved, and/or 188 units. We've heard testimony relative to 10 units out, 15 units out, et cetera, depending on what DEP finds in their permits, in your permit applications. They may reduce the number of units below 188. Yeah. So if they say that you can only build on 183, you got to come back at least for the approval on the remaining 5 if you want to build 188. I understand what DEP hasn't let you do. The issue is where you go from there. The CIS is to be updated, subject to any conditions the board engineer opposes after review of such update. We talked about the trees. If DEP grants any approval on conditional waiver or other permits with substantial conditions as determined by the board engineer, the applicant will have to return to the board to discuss what the conditions are and how the applicant will address same. I have run that one by Mr. Hay, and he concurs.
To the extent the plan is changed by virtue of what they do, you mean? We agree to that.
As determined by the board engineer.
Yeah, if what DEP does, in Mr. Hayes' opinion, causes a change, needs to be made in our plan, we agree we have to come back.
That's what I have so far. I have a feeling others may have others. But
Can I
the
just
bottom
say-
line is that this limitation on the number of units and no construction until we get an approved plan like Sherman.
So I got just
I
two,
just want to get a clarification on the first condition on the number of units, maximum, minimum,
Max up to 188.
because they're requesting 198.
They can't get it's 188 residential lots and 2 open space lots.
Okay.
We're not talking the open space lots. We're talking about building 188 single-family homes. Their application is actually 198 single-family homes,
Right.
of which they've indicated that they can only build under the current sewer service up to 188. So at one point, I believe Mr. Wolfson asked for a conditional on the additional 10. The recommendation is not to grant a condition on any units above 188.
and I have two questions. The first being because obviously we didn't see any architectural drawings, for the houses. So would it be appropriate that the time down the road, when they are able to start to begin construction or could construct, that that they return to the board to see what is being built, what is being proposed?
We object to that, Mr. Chairman,
Why?
because it's not what anybody ever does. It's not legal.
So then my second
We go to the
one
building
is
permit
we
officer.
make this, this approval, potential approval, since we haven't voted on it, with all the conditions, non-transferable.
Well, that actually is subject to the settlement agreement. There's a process upon which the applicant has to get township approval in order to transfer the application to another developer.
So, and if they do come back for that, then we could, if we were to entertain granting that transfer, then we could then require the acquirer to come with architectural drawings.
I think minimally, Mr. Chairman, the board can request that prior to any construction on the site, that the board engineer and the board planner review the proposed architecturals, and if there is a problem, to advise the board accordingly.
I agree that you have the power to oppose such a condition. I think it's unlawful. It violates the UCC, in my opinion. When someone goes in with a building permit for a house on a lot, there could be 380 different houses of different architects for each lot, or there could be a group of types that the applicant might build on spec. This board never oversees what the building department looks at in issuance of a building
No,
permit.
but what this board does oversee, Mr. Wolfson, and you're familiar with this from other applications, is the type of product that's being built on the site.
I don't agree with that. I mean, you're entitled to give your advice to the board, and they're entitled to follow it. I don't agree with it. Single-family home development has never been that way. I believe you know that. I believe your professionals know that. Because if I want to build a house that is a contemporary, I can do it. And I don't need your permission. If I want to build a colonial, I can do it. As long as I meet the side yards and the setbacks, the code officer is going to give me a permit, and I'm going to build that house. Which is why we didn't give you architecture, because we don't know what the homeowners are going to want, whether they're going to have lots of different kinds of things. We have to comply with the requirements of the coverage and the ordinance and everything else, and height, but you can't regulate if I want blue and you want white. I mean, it's just not something that you do.
Are there architectural standards for?
We don't have architectural standards, no, not in the ordinance. But I would say that in the 7.5 years I've been here, every residential project that has come in with architecturals to give the board an idea of the scale and the context, if nothing else, to make sure that it fits the envelope or the height, et cetera. So it's not it's being made as if this is some unusual request. Next door, the Toll Brothers Enclave at Roycebrook, they showed you all their models. So it's not it's not required, but it's not an unusual, it's a standard request.
We don't build single families typically.
Then why are you here?
Because that's what you wanted.
Oh, I see.
That's what you wanted. We wanted multifamily on the site.
At the end of the day, with all due respect, your client wanted single family. Otherwise, your client would never have signed the settlement agreement. So,
well, I can't agree with that statement, but it doesn't matter.
Well, that may not have been their initial intent, but at the end of the day, they did agree to, that they wanted to build single family. So,
we tried to compromise in a way that would make the town happy.
I think the key, Mr. Wolfson, is the board doesn't want to decide whether the outside is blue or white or brick or mortar. I think it's more the mix and the size than anything else.
The size is dictated by the building envelope. And the fact is, your building code officer does this every day. And that's what she or he does. He looks at it to make sure you comply with the ordinance, you fit within the building envelope, you fit within the height, you fit within the coverage, and if you do, you get a permit. And if you don't, he withholds or she withholds the permit. And that's where it belongs. But I don't want to lose track of one other issue. I do not consent to, I don't consent, doesn't mean I understand you could impose it over my objection. Anything that violates the settlement agreement where you have regulations as to phasing. That's in the agreement. It tells us how many units that we can build before the affordable housing have to be done. So any condition that says we can't do anything until, the affordable housing is underway is contrary to the settlement agreement and contrary
No,
to
it's not contrary to the settlement agreement, because the settlement agreement understands that this was going to be ostensibly part and parcel. The settlement agreement never agreed that you could build 47 or 48 or whatever the number is, market rate units, before you came back to this board and sought approval for affordable housing. And that lies the issue. If you had brought the affordable housing application along with this one, we'd be potentially arguing over what the 25% entails, but we don't even have an affordable housing application before us. That's a phase 2. And the concept plan doesn't meet the criteria, because it doesn't meet the criteria for this. It calls for more than a concept plan. You've never made an application to this board as to the Phase 2 development that the settlement agreement requires you to do.
It does not require us to do it at any particular time. I will read to the board paragraph G on page 15 of the settlement agreement. The affordable units to be constructed on the Sherman parcel Phase 2 shall be constructed in accordance with the phasing schedule for inclusionary housing set forth in NJAC 593.5.6D. More specifically, certificates of occupancy for the market rate housing on the M&M parcel and the certificate of occupancy for the affordable housing units on the Sherman tract shall be built in accordance with the following schedule, and the schedule is attached. Minimum percent of market rate units completed, 25. Minimum percent of low and moderate income units completed, 0. 25 plus 1, 10%. 50, 50%. 75, 75%. 90, 100%. That's in the agreement. It's part of the court order.
Mr.
So-
Wilson, I don't think we're disagreeing with
Okay.
phasing. I think we're asking for the actual plan to come before us and the plot plan to be approved, so we have
And
something
we
in
have no
place. that you
problem
can
with
build.
with doing that when we're ready to do it. But this agreement says that we're entitled to build and get COs for 25 units before. And that's part of the money
Well,
that will
that's,
subsidize.
well, the way I would
affordable.
view that is you would be entitled to that before you have to build your first affordable housing unit, but right now, that
That's
doesn't
right.
mean that you get to start building without first given and coming with an affordable housing application. So it doesn't
Mr.
get
Chairman,
into
says
that,
what it
but.
says
but
what it
al-
says. You're entitled to interpret it.
I
the way you want.
interpret, and also, the intent of affordable housing agreements, and obviously we'll get into that when we have the Phase 2 in front of us, but, there was the intent to build 88 affordable housing units in exchange for 380, to be allowed to build 380 more.
That's
That
correct.
was the intent.
That's
And right
correct.
now, we're kind of adrift in the sea right now as to where we are with that. So I think, I concur with Mr. Bernstein's language in there that I think we need to get that
Mr.
affordable
Chairman, I
housing in there.
acknowledge,
And
I acknowledge your right to do so. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't point this
No.
out and make a record for my boss.
Yep.
You'll do what you need to do, and I understand that. I don't take that stuff personally.
Yeah.
I don't even take when Eric insults me and I insult him back personally. It's all part of our longstanding relationship. And
No, it's all good.
I have no idea who this man is.
But,
we understand what
yeah.
you're doing,
And
and I just need to make my record, and I apologize.
No.
If I sound combative, I don't mean to.
No, and it's understood, because I think we've had some of these discussions, some of our prior hearings too, so I respect, what
And I
you're
appreciate
saying.
and I respect the board tremendously.
So, now I'm lost in the drift where I was going, but,
That was the plan.
okay.
So I guess the two, other than Eric's
Right.
points, the two that you had brought up, obviously, which mirrored that, was the phasing in of the application of said Sherman tract. And then also, if nothing else, when the, which we never addressed, the transfer of a property, which we, by ordinance, they have to come back to us for permission, so it doesn't have to be in there. But the architectures, if they should start to build, I would say at least present those to our professionals for approval or an eye on it to make sure they fit within our zoning. Is that fair?
It's fit within the zoning, like,
Fit-
we will
it's
give
within the
them,
architecture and.
we'll
and-
give them, if you want us to provide courtesy copies
Yes.
to Mr. Hay and Mr. Maskey's successor,
For review
and anybody else,
and comment.
when we submit to the building department, we will do so. I agree to do that.
And you gave me enough time to remember what I wanted to
That's
ask.
why, I worked in Hollywood.
We've done
Just
well.
throw it out.
There we go. I don't recall, is there a homeowners association associated with this?
I don't know that that decision has been reached yet.
I would like to offer that, because is this going to be,
Probably will be on my
this is
form.
this is a private development?
It is. Yeah, the roads will be private and the detention basin, so there will be a homeowner association, so to answer your question.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else wants to throw?
Eric, I apologize if you said it, and I, I didn't catch it. Did you say?
Did you say?
Did you say?
Did you say?
I apologize if you said it and I don't mean to be redundant. But I don't want to forget to include the condition imposed or suggested by Ms. Smith that we agree to about the number of trees.
The 1,000 trees on top of the
I'm losing
688.
my touch, I realized. I didn't read the audience well enough to know I could have gotten 1,500. So I retract the 1,000.
I already had a
I
note.
think you can do
I had a
that.
note of 15, by the way.
Yeah.
I asked all those questions.
Could we also see a landscape plan where you plan to plant those 1,680 trees based on the units that will be approved as part of the conditions for?
The
Well, 680 already
680 is
there,
on
so
the
the additional
plan.
1,000 on site.
Yeah, the additional 1,000.
They would have to have that. yeah.
Just for our professionals to review?
Yeah, that'd be part of the compliance process. All of the conditions, et
And it's a
cetera,
fair
that are
point,
being
and we
agreed
agree-
to,
and
they
we
have to
agree.
revise the plans, and they would show an updated landscape plan as well.
Thank you.
We agree that's appropriate.
Anybody else, anything? Okay, so I'm gonna look for a motion. I'm not gonna try to repeat all the conditions, but what has been provided between Mr. Hay and what Mr. Bernstein had outlined.
As well as all previous conditions agreed upon by the parties at previous hearings and tonight.
Is there a motion to approve?
Before we make a motion, I just want to talk a little bit about my typical affordable housing matters. And I just wanted to, there was a couple comments here that I think hit home. You know, we have lost our ability to do certain things locally. Home rule has been essentially removed from local municipalities through the affordable housing process with the fair share housing oversight of what we do. The Supreme Court mandates. We've been in court. You know, do I wish that we had the ability to do what we really wanted to do in town? Of course I do. But the reality is there are mandates that we are subject to, and we have worked to build a plan that allows us to meet those obligations and try to mitigate the impact to the town as best as we could. And I recognize that not everyone's going to agree with that plan, and that there are things that you wish we might have done differently. But the reality is we're baked in with certain projects that need to get done, and this is one of them. And this is one of the projects that is going to contribute nearly 88 affordable units out of the number that we need to commit to. And as a result, it's part of the plan that needs to move forward. There are things I think we can add and put into this plan to make it a little better than maybe what we talked about. And then we just talked about some of those conditions, and we need to ensure that the affordable housing aspect of this gets completed in a way that helps us meet our obligations. So I appreciate your patience. I know sometimes we tend to lose ours. I'll speak for myself. But when we continue to go over the same things, sometimes there are frustrations that come out. So with that, I think some of the additions that we've made help clean this up a little bit. It's been a long time with this application, and you know, I think we're at the point where we need to move forward. And there are things that I'm glad, appreciate the feedback and the comments from the board here. So I think it's helped make this a little better than it was when we started. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And just because I know there are some members in the audience that are, that have said that they're kind of new to it. When the deputy mayor was mayor in 2019, he held a town hall meeting. A few of us were there. I was in the audience at the time, but I encourage you to watch I believe it was April of 2019. It's on on Hillsborough's YouTube channel. It's quite comprehensive on affordable housing. A little bit of the history and taking you right through to how we got where we are today. And it's about 2 hours long, but it's well worth the investment and the time, and it'll help clear up a lot of, questions that folks may have.
Mr. Chairman, before the board takes an action, I want to make sure, and I apologize, that the record is complete. I have received 3 certification of absent board members, examination of the record and eligibility to vote. One is Mr. Peason, one is Mr. Santa Marita, and the other one is Mr. Hashtag. They are all eligible to vote on tonight's application. So I wanted to make sure before anybody starts looking at, well, how come he or she voted, they're all now eligible to vote with these certifications.
Important to have that on the record.
What? David, you have this sheet in front of you?
I will.
Because there seems to be a slight discrepancy.
You raised that.
Well, the discrepancy is whether a member of the board had to sign one, and that would be Mr. Scobo.
I signed one, I'm not sure which one that was.
I'm going by your sheet.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
July and September. You have Ron on both? Then your office has I think probably had one person miss. For the purpose of the record, Mr. Lombardozzi, since you are the official court reporter for this board, can you indicate who was here on the 22nd of July and 28th of July, and who was here on the 22nd of September?
Sure, give me a second.
I know I was here.
Be nice, I'll take your copies.
I'm pretty sure.
Well, he's got them, that's why I'm asking. And I'm only basing it as to what Michael showed me relative to an issue in a sheet.
So I have, on the 28th of July, I have Chairman Sirachi, Vice Chair Julian, Mayor Lapani, at the time, Committeeman Delcor, Mr. Peason, Mr. Scobo, Mr. Wagner, Mr. Santa Ramita, Mr. Ciccarelli, Ms. Smith, which I think is a full complement. I have the same for the.
Mr. Hestag has subsequently signed the certification, which is in your hand for
the
that meeting,
28th.
is that correct?
Yeah, I'm looking at the other sheet
Thank
that the board handed out. Are you looking at this one? This one matches the signature sheets that were.
Looking at the one, this one.
Yeah, there's another one here.
Well, this is
And
the
I will
one
read it
have.
to you. So according to this, and this is the board's record, Mr. Hestag was absent from the 7/28 meeting, which is what he handed in the certification for.
Yep.
And for 9/22, Mr. Peason and Mr. Santa Marita were absent. They've handed in the certifications. According to this, Mr. Scobo was present on the 22nd and on July 28th.
As I said, I'm going from a sheet that Mr. Lombardozzi had, and I will also have, which shows the issue of Mr. Scobo. Michael? Mr.
Yeah, I think
Scott?
I'm going to,
Yeah. All right. So that
On the wrong line.
issue has been, I hope, resolved. The eligible
Yeah.
members of the board all members of the board are eligible to vote. And since all 9 members are eligible, the alternates do not get to vote because we have a full complement to vote. Sorry. You got your trees.
Well, we thank you for your time.
All that for nothing.
No.
No.
You got 500.
I want 1,000.
Yeah.
All right, so I will make a motion. I don't want to reiterate everything that Mr. Deputy Mayor Nice to hear it one more time, Delcor said. But I do recall back when this site was originally being proposed, it was for significantly more units than what was agreed to. And the attorney is shaking his head to the bemusement of the applicant, wanted to build, as he said, multifamily units. And I want to say in excess of 300 or 400, I believe, maybe even 600.
Four times the amount.
So we were able to negotiate, and our attorney was part of that negotiation, and our planner, down to this 188 single-family homes, which I believe is a much more desirable application than what it could have been. And that's part of the things that a lot of people don't know about. They just see the end product, not what it was started at. With that, I will make the motion to approve with the conditions set prior. And I will hope that the applicant will be forthwith and speedy with our Sherman Tract application, so that we can, as you can see, the applications take a long time to get through. So we're a busy board, so please get that on board. So I will make a motion.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
This
thank
is with
you.
all the conditions tonight, all the conditions approved by the parties tonight, and all prior conditions approved prior to this evening.
And Pat's 1,000 trees.
10,000, including but not limited to the addition to the 1,000 trees as part of the reduction on the waiver.
Your motion said all of the parties agreed to, there were a couple
Uh-huh.
that agreed to.
I said, and the ones we imposed and all the conditions the parties agreed to tonight, and all the conditions the parties agreed to prior.
And the conditions that we imposed.
Plus the conditions that the board is agreeing to as recommendation of council.
Thank you. Okay,
We have one.
Roll call.
roll call, please.
Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Mr. Pisa.
Yes.
Mr. Santaromita.
Yes.
Mr. Scobah.
Yes.
Mr. Aztec.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Delcor.
Yes.
Mayor Lapani.
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian.
Yes.
Chair Sarachi.
Yes.
Thank
Okay,
you, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you.
Very much, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor.
Have a good holiday.
okay,
Very much.
and
Really appreciate your hard work today. Made our plan better, which is good. I understand that.
Okay. Thank you, Counselor. So just for the board, just real quick, we do have a meeting next Thursday evening, December 8th. As always, please let the planning office know if you're unable to attend. And with that, I will entertain a motion of adjournment.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye, we're adjourned. Good night, everyone.